It's spooky season and you're wondering which horror movies are available to stream and which ones are worthy of your watch list. In this video, I'm going to save you hours of doom scrolling by letting you know the best horror movies that are currently streaming on the biggest platforms. Welcome into the Nonstop Horror YouTube channel. My name is Cameron. I have spent months and months finding the best horror movies streaming for all of you, and in this video, I'm compiling it all into one video, the ultimate horror streaming guide. That's right, you can find everything you need right here in this video to have a horror-filled October. We're discussing 6 of the major streaming platforms, including Tubi later on in the video, which is a completely free service. You don't even need to sign up to watch movies over there. If you're new here, I talk about horror all year long here on YouTube, so if you're into that, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Enough yapping, let's get to the list. Trick or Treat is the best Halloween movie in my humble opinion, and I'm surprised that this is the first time I'm talking about it on the channel. It's safe to say that whoever gets this title for spooky season is the horror streaming winner, and this year it's HBO Max. This is the perfect movie for spooky season. It takes place on Halloween night. The set design completely engulfs you with its environment. We've got one of the best horror villains in Little Sam, and this is an anthology, which is a subgenre that is hard to do correctly, but when done right, it is just completely satisfying. Trick or Treat interlocks 5 different stories taking place on Halloween night, and here are the quick descriptions of each one. A principal has a secret life, a virgin is looking for her first time, a group of kids pull a prank, a woman who loathes Halloween does not respect the rules, and a mean old man meets a demonic trick-or-treater. I can't even pick a favorite segment from Trick or Treat because they're all that good. Revisit this classic, or if you haven't seen it before, stop everything you're doing and add this to your watch list. You might want to save this one for closer to Halloween, or be like me and plan to fall asleep to it every night in October. In another first for the channel, I am talking about the movie that I deem the scariest horror movie of all time, and that is The Exorcist. This movie traumatized me as a kid, and honestly, some of that trauma still lingers deep within my bones. When a charming 12-year-old girl takes on the characteristics and voices of others, doctors say there is nothing they can do. As people begin to die, the girl's mother realizes her daughter has been possessed by the devil, and her daughter's only possible hope lies with 2 priests and the ancient rite of demonic exorcism. This is the ultimate possession movie. This flick still holds up 50 plus years later. The terrifying demon, the chilling music. I don't need to say much about this movie. If you're a horror fan, you're familiar with The Exorcist, but what you do need to know is that it's on HBO Max if you want to go watch it or traumatize someone else with it. Stephen King fans rejoice. Not only do we have The Long Walk in theaters right now, but we're also getting a prequel TV series to his famous It franchise. It, Welcome to Derry, takes place in 1962 when a couple and their son move to Derry, Maine, just as a young boy disappears, and with their arrival, very bad things begin to happen in the town. Fans of the franchise have a lot to look forward to because at the helm of the show is Adam Muschietti, who directed It and It Chapter 2, and Pennywise is still being played by Bill Skarsgård this time around. At this time, the showrunners are planning on 3 seasons, but episode 1 of season 1 drops on October 26th, with the final episode scheduled to air around mid-December. Now, unless you live under a rock, you've heard of The Substance. It's the best horror movie that came out last year, and if you're somehow sleeping on this one, you need to check it out over on Mubi. Not Tubi, Mubi. Demi Moore plays an aging actress who is introduced to this black market drug, simply called The Substance, that is supposed to create a younger, better version of herself. That younger, better version of herself is played by Margaret Qualley, and Demi's boss is played by Dennis Quaid, and he is an absolute fucking creep in this. There is very little I would change about this movie. The cinematography is reminiscent of films like Requiem for a Dream, with creative angles, lots of VFX, and visual symbolism injected into every minute of the film. So it's beautiful to look at. The performances by Moore, Qualley, and Quaid are spot on, and the plot itself is intriguing, and they just take it to places you just don't expect. Now, the last 30 minutes of the movie is very divisive among fans. I fucking love it, even after rewatching it a couple of times. It goes batshit crazy, and I think it totally earns it. It's a body horror movie that explores ageism and obsession with fame. Let me just tell you, there's a reason this film was nominated for 5 Oscars, alright? Go watch it to find out why. Like I'm sure many of you were, I was worried when they announced Bloodlines because I love the Final Destination franchise, and I didn't want it to get diminished by shitty sequels and cash grabs. I'm going to spoil Final Destination 5 really quick, so in case you haven't seen this 14-year-old movie, earmuffs. I loved that the ending of 5 looped around to the plane crash from the first movie, and I had really wanted to see how they continued that moving forward in the franchise. But don't go into this expecting that type of movie though. They did a really good job of creating a whole different bubble for Bloodlines to live in without relying on the previous films in the franchise to be good. It lives on its own, quite frankly. Plagued by a recurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. So we've got a new premonition, arguably the best premonition sequence in the franchise, and we're really just centered around the members of one family who are in danger in this one, which kind of raises the stakes a bit compared to previous films in the franchise. The deaths are gnarly and disturbing, on par with the best of the best in the franchise, and the movie is funny as well, a great ratio of funny dialogue and moments to offset the crazy deaths. The cast could have been switched up a little bit, like maybe get one big name in there, although 4 and 5 didn't have any big names, I don't think, so maybe that's just a moot point. I did love the Tony Todd appearance in the film, R.I.P., and Richard Hartman was probably my favorite of the main cast. As a fan of the Final Destination franchise from the very beginning, Bloodlines had me on the edge of my seat and ultimately left me satisfied, solidifying its spot as the 5th best horror movie of the year so far. Holy hell, Bring Her Back blew me away. I was late to the game on this one as I really wanted to watch it with my wife because I could just tell that it was going to be a banger, but I finally watched it and so glad I did. Bring Her Back is an Australian horror movie brought to us by the same dudes who directed Talk to Me, another fantastic horror movie released in 2022. Now, Talk to Me is a great movie, don't get me wrong. Bring Her Back is better. Let's just start there. It's just so much better. It's about 2 step-siblings who are orphaned and taken in by a new foster mother who is the biggest piece of shit I've seen in a horror movie in quite a while, like the video If You Agree. And they're placed into this home, there's another sibling, and there's some sort of twisted ritual happening, and it's them dealing with that. The descriptions on IMDb and Letterboxd each kind of give too much information, so I'm just giving you as much information as I personally had going into this one. The trailers that I watched did not give away a whole lot of the story, and the vibe and tone that I personally projected in my head were nothing like what the movie ended up being, and that's a very good thing. The acting in this one is on point from everybody involved, and it may just be recency bias on my end, but I don't have any big issues with this film right now. Bring Her Back is heavy, it's bleak, it's depressing, and kudos to these filmmakers for not breaking the tension with tongue-in-cheek humor or wacky scenes and whatnot. This is just straight horror right here. Bring Her Back has some of the best gore this year, some of the most disturbing scenes, and yeah, it's one that you won't soon forget. I say that kind of a lot about good movies, but yeah, this one's just going to stand the test of time, I can totally tell. And the way the story is fleshed out and resolved at the end was just a thing of beauty. I was on the verge of tears. This is going to be hard to beat as #1 horror film this year, but I will not stop searching for a better one. In case you live under a rock and haven't heard, we lost one of the best creative minds to ever exist back in January, and David Lynch. He was a unique director. He created Twin Peaks and made films like Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Blue Velvet, and this horror classic, Eraserhead. If you're unfamiliar with Lynch's work, you've got to know that he was heavy-handed in the surrealism. There's even a coined term in filmmaking named after him. If something is Lynchian, it means it's dark, ominous, and surreal. And Lynch would really bring about this crossroads of that surrealism with everyday, mundane, boring tasks, which gave his work that unique characteristic. And that is exactly what we do get in Eraserhead, where we're thrust into an industrial cityscape and introduced to Henry Spencer now. Henry is a hardworking man who suddenly finds himself solely responsible for his girlfriend's recently birthed deformed baby. It looks nothing like a human, so we're unsure exactly what it is. The movie is Henry's journey adapting to and dealing with this newfound fatherhood. The movie combines hallmark visuals with an evocative oral landscape to make a delicious audio-visual salad. There are a lot of sexual themes throughout the movie, as well as the idea of taking control of your life rather than being passive and just letting things happen. This movie is in black and white, and if you've never seen anything by David Lynch before,
2024, you are in for a wild ride.
There is a better Lynch film on Max right now, Fire Walk With Me, but that requires viewing of the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, whereas with Eraserhead, you can just jump in, which is why I included Eraserhead instead. Evil Dead Rise is the most recent entry into the Evil Dead universe. It's a standalone film, so it's not really related to the others. It was originally supposed to be streaming only on HBO Max, but it did so well in screenings that they gave it a theatrical release, and I bet they're glad that they did that because last year, 2023, it brought in $147 million, making it the highest grossing of the Evil Dead franchise.
Okay, now that I've sold you on the vanity metrics, let's get to the plot. Evil Dead Rise follows 2 estranged sisters who reunite, but their family time together is quickly interrupted when they discover an ancient book that releases bloodthirsty demons. They live in this high-rise apartment building, which hence the title Evil Dead Rise, so you can think of this as like Evil Dead, but in a high-rise apartment building.
So the sisters must fight to survive against this evil force, and it turns their home into a gory battleground. This movie is universally praised and even won a bunch of awards at the Chainsaw Awards hosted by Fangoria, so there's a high chance you'll enjoy it. Carnival of Souls was released in 1962. It's in black and white, and it's a psychological horror. I wouldn't call this movie inherently scary, as it boasts more atmosphere than jump scares, but it's an interesting look at how horror was in the 60s. It took a while for this film to get any recognition and love, but it's regarded as a classic today. So plot-wise, after a traumatic accident, this woman relocates to a small town to start fresh, but she soon finds herself drawn to a mysterious, abandoned carnival. She's haunted by eerie figures and a mysterious man who seems to stalk her wherever she goes.
Carnival of Souls was for fans of Twilight Zone, the OG Night of the Living Dead, and even David Lynch's surreal horror work because of its dreamlike dread. It's a low-budget flick, and it proves that atmosphere can be just as effective as jump scares, and the incredible organ score contributes to that fact.
Complex Magazine has it at number 39 on its list of the 50 scariest movies ever made. Slant Magazine placed it at number 32 on its 100 best horror movies of all time list. The film has also been named a precursor to the works of various filmmakers like David Lynch, George A. Romero, and James Wan, and there hasn't been an attempt to remake this classic quite yet, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time. You can't talk about horror without mentioning The Silence of the Lambs. It's one of only a handful of horror films to win Best Picture at the Oscars, and it's a masterclass in tension, performance, and psychological dread. At its core, the movie is about an FBI trainee, Clarice Starling, played by a perfectly restrained Jodie Foster, who's tasked with interviewing the infamous Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist and convicted cannibal, to help catch another serial killer, Buffalo Bill. But this isn't just about the hunt, it's about mind games too. Every scene between Clarice and Lecter crackles with unease, power dynamics, and eerie intimacy. And of course, Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of Lecter is nothing short of iconic. He's polite, intelligent, and absolutely terrifying. The film blends procedural thriller with psychological horror so seamlessly that you almost forget how disturbing it truly is until the lights are off and Lecter's voice echoes in your head even after the credits roll. The Silence of the Lambs is a horror essential, and thanks to Max adding it to their lineup this month, it's easier than ever to dive into this classic. If you liked the 2024 hit Longlegs and somehow you've never seen Silence of the Lambs, that's another scenario where I would highly recommend watching this movie. The Ugly Stepsister is one of the biggest surprises of the year. This masterpiece of a horror film can be watched on Shudder right now. It debuted at Sundance, I believe, and I think there was a small theatrical release, but I don't recall if it was nationwide. I'm not sure. I might just not have been super aware of the film at the time, but I would have loved to see this in the theater. Unfortunately, I didn't get to. The Ugly Stepsister retells a story as old as time, the old motif of Cinderella, but told from the stepsister's point of view. As in the classic tale, there is a prince who is in need of a wife, and he plans a ball for all of his suitors to attend so he can pick the fairest of them all. Our main character, Elvira, battles to compete with her incredibly beautiful stepsister, and she will go to any length to catch the prince's eye. Really, it's her mother who will go to any length, which is a big part of the movie. Body horror lovers rejoice. This movie has its body horror moments that will make you wince and cringe. It's also labeled as a black comedy, so expect some cheeky humor and smiles throughout as well. It's shot beautifully, oozing with that old Victorian style and vibe. This is also the directorial debut from Amelia Blickfield, I think is her last name, which is also impressive. So, side note really quick, there is a great interview that James and Chelsea from Dead Meat hosted with the director.
You should definitely go check that out. It's a wonderful interview and gives you a lot of insight into the film. So if you go and watch the trailer for this film, it has The Substance written all over it. They were definitely trying to draw on that same audience who loved The Substance. And while the underlying themes of the two movies overlap, I wouldn't tell someone, hey, if you liked The Substance, go watch The Ugly Stepsister. And the director says the same thing herself in that interview, noting that her movie is not as stuffed with body horror stuff as The Substance is. I believe there's still enough disconnect in the plot and tone of the movies to keep them completely separate. But definitely worth a watch. Like I said, this was one of the biggest surprises this year. Not very well talked about. It is a Norwegian film, so you'll have to watch with subtitles, but totally worth it. Go check it out on Shudder. That's right, it's already April, which means we're halfway to Halloween, and Shudder got the memo. The ultimate horror movie, Halloween, the original, 1978, just landed on Shudder, and believe me when I say it is the perfect horror movie for any time of the year, not just Halloween. I haven't met anyone recently who's never seen this flick, so I'm sure you're familiar, but just in case, let's refresh on the plot. Released in 1978 on a shoestring budget, Halloween introduced us to Michael Myers, the silent, unstoppable killer in a pale white mask who escapes from a mental institution and returns to his hometown to ruin everybody's night. Why is Halloween still so good 47 years later? What makes Halloween timeless is its simplicity. It doesn't rely on gore or elaborate backstories. It's pure dread. It's Michael lurking in the background, making you scan every inch of your TV screen. It's the amazing score composed by the director himself, John Carpenter. It's the amazing performance put on by Jamie Lee Curtis as our ultimate final girl. She feels like a real person reacting like you or I would in this situation, something a lot of slasher flicks misfire on. And so whether it's your first or 100th time, you gotta revisit Halloween as soon as you can on Shudder. Did I just say that Halloween doesn't rely on gore? Well, The Sadness absolutely does rely on blood and gore. It's one of the most unrelentingly brutal films to come out here in the 2020s, and I'm just gonna come out and say it. It's almost like 28 Days Later and a Serbian film had a baby. That felt kind of gross to say. The film is set in Taiwan, where a mysterious virus begins to spread very quickly, but this isn't your average zombie outbreak. Infected people don't just become mindless killers, they become hyper-violent, sadistic monsters, fully aware of what they're doing and loving every second of it. Our main characters are a couple who are in different locations at the onset of the virus outbreak, and they're trying to both survive and eventually find each other while the city around them erupts in chaos. I need to emphasize the amount of gore and violence in this movie, and it's not just any kind of violence, but sexual violence. It really toes the line between horror and absolute depravity, but somehow it never feels like they're doing it just for shock value, something like a Serbian film did. The Sadness is masterfully filmed as well, so you can't knock it for its cinematic quality. The directing is tight, and pacing-wise, it feels like you never get a chance to breathe. It's certainly an endurance test, but one worth completing, and when you look past the bloody, disturbing nature of the film, there's a lot of social commentary to dissect. I am going to sing my praises for this film until everybody in the world has seen it. Deadstream is such a good time, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you're skipping it. This is a found footage comedy horror flick where we follow recently canceled YouTuber Sean Ruddy as he embarks on his big comeback tour. To win back the grace of his sponsors and viewers alike, he decides to livestream his overnight stay in a haunted house. The practical effects in this are exquisite. It's the perfect mix of comedy and horror, and it feels like an honorable homage to the Evil Dead series. A charismatic, well-acted lead is what separates good horror movies from great ones, and Joseph Winter is the life of this movie in his portrayal of our main character, Sean. This is certainly a breath of fresh air in the found footage circle, and you've got to go check it out. I'm surprised this movie is still streaming. After a long hiatus from streaming services, The Others dropped on Shudder back in January, and honestly, I thought it was only going to be for a month or two, but it's still available to stream. Also, don't let that PG-13 rating fool you. The Others is one of the most haunting horror films in cinema history. It doesn't rely on gore or cheap jump scares whatsoever. It is a masterclass in atmosphere and subtle eeriness. Nicole Kidman gives one of the best performances in horror history. She takes herself and her two children back to her family estate to await her husband's return from battle. Her 2 kids have a disease that prevents them from being able to be in direct sunlight. So odd things begin to happen once they're in this home, and she becomes convinced that the house is haunted. Now, I don't want to say too much about this film. If you haven't seen it, just go watch it. If you have seen this film, I think you know exactly what I want to say. Fun note, I didn't remember that Christopher Eccleston is also in the film, but I also watched this before witnessing his acting prowess in shows like The Leftovers and Doctor Who. So go take advantage of the fact that this movie is now streaming on Shudder. Alright, let's lighten the mood a bit with a brilliant horror comedy from Ireland that asks a very simple question. What if the only way to survive an alien invasion was to get blackout drunk? Grabber's setup is classic sci-fi horror. A small Irish fishing village finds itself under siege by monstrous, tentacled alien creatures that have washed up from the sea. These things are hungry, slimy, and they're just starting to pick off the locals one by one. But here's the twist. These creatures are fatally allergic to alcohol. Like literally, booze is poison to them, and once they find this out, they do what any logical person would do in this situation. They throw the most dangerous lock-in pub session of all time. Grabbers walks a perfect tightrope between being genuinely creepy and laugh-out-loud funny. The creature design is solid, the visual effects punch well above their budget, and the chemistry between the leads, particularly the perpetually hungover cop, is hilarious. It's got heart, charm, and enough monster mayhem to satisfy creature feature fans. Grabbers is essentially the movie that would pop out if Tremors and Shaun of the Dead had a child. It's the kind of horror film that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it still delivers the thrills where it counts. Alright, so we're about halfway through our list at this point. If you've enjoyed the video so far, I'd love if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can keep chatting about horror movies all year long. And remember, you can sign up for a free trial to Shudder using the QR code or the link down in the description. One Cut of the Dead. At first glance, it looks like your typical low-budget zombie flick. A film crew is shooting a horror movie in an abandoned warehouse when, surprise, real aliens show up. And what follows is a single take, 37-minute sequence of absolute chaos. It's messy, it's weird, and it kind of feels amateur, and you'll probably be wondering at this point, why is everybody hyping this up? But don't stop watching, because after that first chunk, the film pulls the rug out from under you and transforms into something completely different, something way smarter, funnier, and more heartfelt than you ever expected. Now, without spoiling anything, One Cut of the Dead is really about the love of filmmaking, about doing the best with what you've got, and about the absolute insanity that happens behind the scenes of horror movies. It's meta in the best way, and by the end, you'll be smiling just as much as you're squirming. It's definitely a movie that rewards patience, that initial confusion you feel in the first act. It all pays off beautifully, and by the time the credits roll, you'll be thinking, that was absolutely genius. If you're not convinced yet, check this out. It's currently sitting at #1 on Rotten Tomatoes list of the 100 best found footage movies, and it's raved by critics and audiences alike. Go watch it. Red Rooms is not your typical horror movie. It's definitely a slow burn. It's psychological descent into the darkest corners of the internet. If you're into horror that's more about dread than jump scares and a movie that lingers with you long after it ends, this one's going to mess with you in all the right ways. So the film follows a woman who becomes obsessed with the trial of a serial killer. Specifically, she becomes fixated on the alleged existence of these red rooms where snuff videos take place, and one of these is tied to the case she's witnessing. As she dives deeper, trying to find the video and understand the killer, things just kind of start to blur a little bit. Morality, curiosity, and obsession collide in a deeply disturbing way. This one's cold, it's clinical, and incredibly tense. Think like Gone Girl meets Martyrs without the gore, but with all of the existential dread. The acting is chilling, the cinematography is icy and detached, and the sound design does a lot of heavy lifting to keep you in this like suffocating headspace. And what makes Red Room so terrifying is that there's no supernatural element to it. It's all rooted in very real, very human horror. The fear of what people are capable of, especially when they're looking for something they know they shouldn't see. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more like horror or thriller, then Red Room should definitely be on your watch list. Before The Ring terrified American audiences in 2002, there was Ringu, and to no one's surprise, it's still the superior version in many ways. This Japanese horror classic centers on a cursed videotape. You watch it, and then you'll receive a phone call whispering, 7 days, and then you basically die at the end of those 7 days. Everybody knows this trope.
It's a brilliant premise, albeit one of the most parodied tropes nowadays, and this is where it all started. And where American remakes lean on jump scares, Ringu thrives in its quiet unease. The static-filled imagery, the creeping pace, and Sadako herself, she's like the Samara equivalent in the Japanese version, her emergence from the TV remains one of the horror's most iconic moments. And all of this is rooted in deeply cultural fears. It's a ghost story, sure, but also a meditation on technology, repression, and grief. If you've only seen the US version, do yourself a favor and experience Ringu. It's not just an important piece of horror history, it's still genuinely unsettling decades later. So that was back in 2002. Let's bring it a little bit more recent. This movie and the next are fantastic horror movies that came out just last year. So Mads is a French horror film that came out of nowhere in 2024, and the story unfolds in a single continuous take. I know a lot of people are loving on the TV show Adolescence right now because they do the same thing, and you'll find it's just as impressive here. So our main character, Romain, visits his drug dealer who gives him a mysterious powder that he consumes before meeting up with his girlfriend at a party. He hits a little roadblock though when he encounters an injured woman on the side of the road on his way to that party. And he picks her up and she attacks him for seemingly no reason. He leaves the scene and heads to the party, but things just start seeming off, and we can't tell if the things he begins experiencing are hallucinations due to the unknown drug that he took, or these things are actually happening to him. The film starts off slow, but then gets batshit crazy as the night goes on. It's really impressive what they were able to pull off on such a small budget. The way this is filmed just makes everything seem like raw and unfiltered, almost like a found footage film, but without being found footage, if that makes any sense. And let me just say, if you like zombie films but want something that feels like a breath of fresh air, check out Mads. Alright, so Oddity isn't quite the hidden gem it once was, so my apologies if you've already seen it. However, if you're a sucker for dark, atmospheric, whodunit type movies, Oddity is right up your alley. The film centers on a blind woman who is haunted by the death of her twin sister 1 year prior. She travels to her deceased sister's home to try and figure out who exactly is responsible for her death. And she happens to own an oddity store as well, so she brings along this creepy wooden statue thing, which is supposed to help her solve the mystery. Oddity is a very simple and straightforward story. The tension and atmosphere that the movie conjures is unmatched, if you ask me. The cinematography and sound design are big proponents of building that tension and atmosphere. The jump scares they utilize in the film are more effective because of this, and they're not just used as a scapegoat for a boring film. The jump scares in Oddity actually carry the plot forward. Carolyn Bracken does a fantastic job of playing two different characters. She plays the twins, and I felt unsettled throughout the whole movie, and the mystery just grips you until the very end. One last selling point I'll say is it's a movie that kind of feels like Hereditary and The Lodge had a baby. Just a lot of grief, dread, and uncanny stillness. When Evil Lurks is on par with The Sadness as far as like the most brutal and gory films on this list, and I think they both take just as many risks, if you ask me. When Evil Lurks is an Argentinian film and also a Shudder exclusive that you've been putting off for far too long. It came out in 2023 and landed on a lot of people's lists of for the best horror movies of that year. Just be warned, this is a messed up ride you're about to go on if you choose to watch this film. This one's about two brothers who live out in the country, and they find out that one of their neighbors is possessed by an unborn demon, and we follow them as they try to prevent it from being born. This movie would make people's like most disturbing and most gory lists, so if you have an uneasy stomach when it comes to horror, avoid this one. But if you want to see some great imagery that will be burned into your head, come on in. Just know that there are no rules as far as who's in danger in this film. I was bewildered by some of the moments in this one. Definitely not for the faint of heart. I recommend The Tunnel to anyone who loves As Above, So Below. This movie came first and I believe inspired movies like As Above, So Below. Though the movies differ plot-wise, I still think that they're on par with each other quality-wise. So just like in As Above, So Below, we're following a documentary crew, but instead of following a complex set of clues on the hunt for the Philosopher's Stone, which leads them to the underground catacombs of Paris, in The Tunnel, the crew is investigating these abandoned tunnels underneath Sydney, Australia, and they uncover a water conspiracy. Okay, on paper I can see how that might not sound as appealing, but believe me, the tunnel is creepy as fuck. The crew decides to take matters into their own hands and they head down into the tunnels themselves, exploring deeper and deeper into the tunnels, maybe going further than they should have. If you end up liking Tunnel, there's actually a documentary on Shudder as well, talking about the making of the tunnel and also the viral campaign that the filmmakers launched to get the word out there about the film.
You ever had a bad date? Whether you have or not, you can experience vicariously a relationship that you're going to be pretty happy you're not a part of. Audition is a Japanese film about an older gentleman who is looking for a new partner and holds these fake movie auditions to try and find his the one. Yeah, pretty scummy behavior. However, his search proves to be pretty successful because he does find a new woman to court, and we basically experience the beginning of their new dating life before it takes a disturbing and stomach-churning turn. This is a slow burn that keeps you interested in its build up to its climax and definitely does not let you down in its finale. Audition is visceral, unique, and just makes me feel weird inside. It's interesting watching what could be mistaken for a romantic drama turn into a disturbing horror film almost instantly, but holy hell is it worth a watch.
If you're squeamish when it comes to gore and needles, anything of that sort, maybe stay away from this one because you're going to get a lot of that.
Dog Soldiers is an action horror werewolf film, and that's either going to highly encourage you to watch it or instantly turn you away. But either way, that's exactly where you're going to get with this one. The film follows a squad of 6 British soldiers who are dumped off into a remote area of the Scottish Highlands to undergo a military training exercise. While doing this exercise, the squad finds a wounded soldier, the sole survivor of an attack nearby, and they take refuge in a nearby farmhouse as they figure out what they're going to do if these attackers decide to go after them next.
Writer-director Neil Marshall wanted the focus to be on the soldiers in this rather than the werewolves, which I really appreciate. You get a good sense of the relationship between these soldiers, which makes some of the plot points later on hit pretty hard.
Marshall also wanted to avoid cliches about werewolf curses and how awful it is to be a werewolf, stating that it was something that he thought was overused in other werewolf films, so you might see something in Dog Soldiers that you haven't seen in a werewolf film before. Worth giving it a shot. Stop Motion was one of those films that was kind of in limbo between being a 2023 film and a 2024 film, which I think was a part of why I got overshadowed by so many films last year. And I totally understand it. It's not an easy movie to fall in love with on a first viewing, but I think once you grasp the film's themes and what it's trying to say, there's definitely a lot more to appreciate on a second watch. I personally required a rewatch to get this one. To give you an idea of what you're going to get from this film, some of the main themes are grief and getting over your past trauma. The movie is called Stop Motion because our main character, Alla, is a stop motion artist and she's working on a project with her mother.
Alla is played by Eileen Franciosi, who was in the Speak No Evil remake. She was in The Nightingale, and she was in a couple episodes of Game of Thrones. So she's got a great backlog of movies, and she's fantastic in this.
So in the movie, Ella's mother has arthritis, so she can't really do a whole lot of the building and animating of the film, and so a big portion of the work has been thrust onto Ella's shoulders. Unfortunately, Ella's mom has a stroke and becomes comatose, and so the rest of the film is just watching Ella deal with that, on top of becoming more and more obsessed with finishing this project.
We witness Alla process all the things that are happening with her mother, as well as the piling stress of finishing this project, and it all just eventually leads her into a downward spiral.
This movie has a very surreal, uncanny atmosphere, especially when we're presented with these ominous, eerie scenes from the stop-motion animation that they're creating. So yeah, I think it is just a very unique film that deserves more attention. If you want something a little bit more fun and lighthearted, then Superhost is for you. Superhost is about 2 vloggers who go to stay in a remote vacation rental to film content for their YouTube channel. I can't remember if they specifically say they're YouTubers or if it's some other platform, but they're essentially YouTubers. And I know what you're thinking already. Cringe. And you're exactly right. The couple's vlogging antics will probably get on your nerves pretty quickly in this one, but it's kind of one of those can't look away from an accident situations. I don't know, it's worth it to me. Anyway, they get to their vacation rental. It's basically an Airbnb, and their host is just very over enthusiastic about them being there, and she's very overbearing, and it just creates a lot of awkward tension between them. And her overbearingness just kind of ends up turning into something a little bit more menacing.
The host's character is what carries the movie for me. She's played by Gracie Gillum. I looked her up on IMDb. She has a couple other horror movies she's in. I'm definitely adding them to my watch list.
This is a lighthearted psychological horror that blends vacation horror, influencer culture, and home invasion tropes into one entertaining package. It's perfect for viewers looking for something creepy but not too heavy. It's a fun, tongue-in-cheek romp that just doesn't take itself too seriously.
The found footage phenomenon. I think this is the first documentary that I am recommending on this channel, which is kind of crazy because I'm a documentary kind of guy. I really love horror documentaries, but it's also probably my favorite documentary that you can find on Shudder right now. The title says it all. This doc dives deep into the best subgenre of horror, if you ask me, found footage. You learn about where it began, where it is now, and we hear from the creators of some of the best found footage movies to ever come out about their inspirations and process behind making these films. We spent decades with this film, going back as far as movies like Cannibal Holocaust and bringing it as recent as movies like Host and Death of a Vlogger, so there's a high chance that your favorite found footage horror film is going to be talked about. I'd go out on a limb and say that this is required viewing for anyone who loves found footage. But this also leads me to a question. Where does the horror audience fall when it comes to documentaries? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? If you are a fan, I may have some others to recommend to you guys, so let me know down in the comments.
If you're looking for a horror film that will leave you physically uncomfortable, Eden Lake is it. This British horror thriller is as intense as they come, featuring relentless psychological and physical torment that will stick with you for days. The film follows Jenny, played by Kelly Reilly, who's currently well known for Yellowstone, and her boyfriend Steve, Michael Fassbender, you all know him, a couple looking for a quiet getaway in the countryside. They plan a romantic weekend at a remote lake, but their trip quickly turns into a nightmare when they encounter a gang of aggressive teenagers. Yes, teenagers. What starts as a minor confrontation escalates into a horrifying game of survival as the couple becomes the target of sadistic, unrelenting violence. Unlike horror films that rely on supernatural entities or masked killers, Eden Lake is terrifying because of how real it feels. The idea that a group of teenagers, kids really, could be so ruthlessly violent without remorse makes it all the more disturbing. The film taps into primal fears of helplessness and being hunted, and the brutality on display is unflinching. The performances are stellar, especially from Kelly Reilly, who delivers an emotionally devastating portrayal of a woman pushed to her absolute limits. The cinematography makes brilliant use of the remote setting, creating an eerie contrast between the beauty of nature and the horror unfolding within it. But fair warning, Eden Lake is not an easy watch. It's bleak, it's cruel, and it doesn't offer much in the way of relief. But if you're into horror that punches you in the gut and leaves you rattled, this is one of the most effective survival horror films ever made. If we have any fans of Bill Skarsgård or Micah Monroe in the building, listen up. Sometimes horror works best when it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's exactly what Villains delivers. A dark, twisted horror comedy that keeps you on the edge while making you laugh at the same time. The film follows Mickey and Jules, played by Skarsgård and Monroe respectively. They're a young couple on the run after a botched robbery, and their car breaks down, of course, forcing them to seek shelter in what appears to be an abandoned house. But instead of finding a safe haven, they stumble upon a horrifying secret hidden in the basement, and soon realize the homeowners are far more dangerous than they are. Jeffrey Donovan and Kyra Sedgwick play the seemingly normal suburban couple who own the house, and let's just say they're not what they seem. As Mickey and Jules try to escape, the story takes unexpected twists, blending tension, humor, and sheer chaos. What makes Villains stand out is its ability to balance humor and horror without undercutting the tension. The chemistry between Skarsgård and Monroe is fantastic, making their characters both charming and relatable despite their criminal background. And I gotta say, Jeffrey Donovan steals the spotlight anytime he's on screen. The film also plays with audience expectations. Just when you think you know where it's going, it takes a sharp left turn into madness. If you're a fan of movies like Ready or Not or Don't Breathe, this one is a must-watch. It's a fast-paced, stylish, and wickedly fun ride that proves horror doesn't always have to be doom and gloom, especially like Eden Lake. There's something about ancient books and secret cults that makes for a chilling horror story, and The Ninth Gate takes full advantage of that eerie premise. Directed by Roman Polanski, who also did Rosemary's Baby, this supernatural thriller follows Dean Corso, who's played by Johnny Depp, a rare book dealer hired to authenticate an ancient manuscript rumored to summon the devil himself. Corso's investigation takes him across Europe, leading him into a shadowy world of secret societies, cryptic symbols, and satanic rituals. As he delves deeper, strange occurrences start happening around him, and he soon realizes that the book may be more powerful and dangerous than he ever imagined. Unlike many horror films that rely on gore and jump scares, The Ninth Gate builds its tension through atmosphere and slow-burning mystery. The cinematography is dark and moody, the score is hauntingly elegant, and the sense of unease steadily grows as Corso inches closer to unlocking the book's secrets. Johnny Depp delivers a subdued yet compelling performance, portraying Corso as a morally ambiguous character who isn't entirely innocent himself. The film raises intriguing questions about power, knowledge, and the dangers of seeking the truth, truth, especially when that truth might cost you your soul. If you're a fan of slow burn, occult-themed horror like The Omen or Angel Heart, The Ninth Gate is a must-watch. If you're obsessed with the Saw franchise like me, The Collector is absolutely up your alley. In fact, this film was originally pitched as a Saw prequel before it evolved into its own unique brand of brutal, trap-filled terror. The story follows Arkin, a skilled thief who breaks into a wealthy family's home, planning to rob them while they're away, but when he steps inside, he realizes he's not alone. Someone far worse got there first, a masked killer known as The Collector, who has rigged the entire house with deadly, inescapable traps. Uh-oh. As Arkin tries to survive and find a way out, he discovers that the family he intended to rob is still inside, held captive by this sadistic killer. What follows is a nightmarish battle of wits as Arkin navigates the maze of deadly contraptions, trying to outmaneuver a predator who seems to be one step ahead at all times. So unlike Saw, where victims have a small chance of escape if they follow the killer's twisted rules, The Collector plays by his own set of rules, ones that offer no mercy. The film is fast-paced, unrelentingly tense, and filled with jaw-dropping moments of brutality. If you're into intense survival horror with a side of sadistic creativity, The Collector is one of the best of its kind. Horror doesn't always have to be about ghosts and monsters. Sometimes the scariest thing is the unknown. Synchronic is a mind-bending sci-fi horror film that plays with time, perception, and reality itself, delivering one of the most unique horror experiences in recent years. It's brought to us by the filmmaking duo Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who made the films like The Endless and Resolution and There's Something in the Dirt. The film follows two paramedics, played by Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan, who begin encountering bizarre and inexplicable deaths across New Orleans. The victims all have one thing in common, a mysterious new designer drug called Synchronic. As the paramedics dig deeper, they uncover something terrifying. Synchronic doesn't just cause hallucinations, it alters time. The drug sends users into different points in history, but without any control over where or when they'll land. It's bonkers. Some find themselves in prehistoric times, others in war zones, and many never return at all. So when Mackie's character takes the drug himself, he's thrown into a desperate race against time to solve the mystery before it's too late. And what follows is a fascinating, mind-warping journey filled with suspense, existential horror, and some truly breathtaking visuals. If you love films like Coherence, The Endless, or Inception, Synchronic is a must-watch. It's horror, sci-fi, and mystery all rolled into one. If you're a fan of classic slashers, Sleepaway Camp is essential viewing. On the surface, it may seem like just another Friday the 13th clone, but don't be fooled. This movie has one of the most shocking twist endings in horror history. The film follows Angela, a shy, awkward girl who is sent to a summer camp with her cousin. And from the very beginning, something just feels kind of off. Angela barely speaks, her cousin is overly protective, and the other campers seem unusually cruel to her. Then the bodies start piling up. At first, the deaths seem like tragic accidents, drownings, bee stings, kitchen mishaps, but as the camp counselors scramble to keep the chaos under control, it becomes clear that someone is picking off campers one by one. And when the killer is finally revealed, let's just say you will not be prepared. Sleepaway Camp is a perfect mix of 80s campiness, over-the-top performances, and genuinely eerie moments. It's got all the classic slasher tropes, cheesy dialogue, ridiculous kills, and questionable fashion choices, but it also has an edge that sets it apart. That final scene, it's the stuff of nightmares. If you love classic horror and haven't seen Sleepaway Camp, watch it immediately. Just avoid spoilers at all costs. Few horror films are as visually stunning or as psychologically disturbing as The Neon Demon. Directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, who did Drive and Only God Forgives, this is a film that doesn't just show horror, it immerses you in it. Elle Fanning stars as Jessie, a young aspiring model who moves to Los Angeles hoping to break into the industry. She's beautiful, innocent, and seemingly perfect. But the fashion world is a cruel place, and Jessie soon finds herself surrounded by jealous, predatory women who will literally do anything to consume her beauty. The Neon Demon is more of a surreal nightmare than a traditional horror film. It's filled with hypnotic imagery, dreamlike sequences, and moments of shocking violence that hit like a punch to the gut. The entire film plays like a twisted fairy tale, exploring themes of vanity, obsession, and the dark side of perfection. But if you're a fan of psychological horror, Suspiria, both the original and the remake, or the eerie, slow burn dread of David Lynch, The Neon Demon is a must-watch. It's a mesmerizing, unsettling experience that lingers long after it ends.
Oculus is one of those rare horror movies that hits you both psychologically and emotionally. It's directed by Mike Flanagan, who did The Haunting of Hill House and Dr. Sleep, and this 2013 film just messes with your head in the best way possible. It centers on a brother and sister trying to destroy a cursed antique mirror that they believe was responsible for the death of their parents. But the mirror doesn't just sit there, it distorts reality for them, their memories, and their perception, and you never quite know what's real and what's manipulation. There are a lot of themes that Flanagan displays in Oculus that he would dive in a little deeper when he made the jump to television, like nonlinear mystery storytelling or generational family trauma. But I think what makes Oculus so good is its structure. It cuts back and forth between the past and the present, blurring timelines until you're just as confused and horrified as the characters. It's like a haunted house movie told from inside a gaslighting object. I absolutely adore the cinematography and the score in Oculus, and the dialogue is sharp, which at this point is just a Flanagan staple. The film is eerie and still gave me goosebumps on a rewatch. It's very tense and truly scary in a few parts. This one has some haunting imagery, subtle yet skin-crawling effects, and a sense of inescapable doom that builds with every scene. It's a modern horror staple and helped launch Flanagan into horror royalty. If you're into practical effects, 80s dark fantasy, or movies that feel like a fever dream, Moongarden should be on your radar. Shot on expired 35mm film with vintage lenses, this visually stunning surreal fantasy horror follows a little girl who falls into a coma and wakes up in a twisted dreamscape version of reality. She's in this weird, steampunk-like world, but there are hints of the real world injected into this world as well. It's a really neat portrayal of what it could feel like being in a coma. It feels like what would happen if Labyrinth and Return to Oz had a baby. It has the same sense of dread, decay, and strangeness to it. Everything in Moongarden feels hand-built, and apparently the film only uses existing media sources and practical effects, including things like stop-motion animation. The child lead carries the entire movie, and her journey through this decaying fantasy world is part fairy tale and part trauma response. It's a love letter to practical world building and one of those rare genre films that feels both timeless and deeply personal. This isn't a jump scare movie, it's a mood piece and a buffet for set design fiends. Though the movie isn't jump scare laden, the monster in the movie is the type of thing that will haunt your dreams. It is so terrifying. A Quiet Place Day One is a pivotal entry into the Quiet Place franchise as it serves as the prequel and vision into the unsettling beginning of this alien invasion that rests at the core of the franchise. As New York City is invaded by alien creatures who hunt by sound, a woman named Sam fights to survive with her cat. First off, I will say that this isn't my favorite of the franchise, but it's required viewing for any fan of the franchise because we see or hear how it all began. And the beginning of the invasion is shown to us through a killer cold open, spanning longer than 10 minutes before we get that title card. I do want to tell you, although we're seeing the beginning of the invasion, we don't focus on the aliens or where they came from or their reasoning. This really is just Sam's experience that we witness. Just want to set expectations there so you're not severely disappointed like a lot of viewers. Sam's motivation in the movie gives us an emotional core that pays off really well in the end, and it gives you something to root for throughout the entire runtime. I'm pretty sure throwing out the names Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn these days will get anybody's butt in a theater seat, and seeing them play off of each other as they fight to survive from these vicious alien creatures is a joy to watch. We do see plenty of creatures in the film, which I'm sure is what most people want, and just like with the other films, expect a lot of tension, nail-biting, and edge-of-your-seat thrills throughout day one. Like I briefly mentioned, there is a cute little cat in the movie, which is probably most people's favorite character. And this is kind of a spoiler, I guess, but it's not integral to the main plot. The cat doesn't die, okay? It's actually the part of the movie where you have to suspend all of your belief because the cat doesn't make a peep the whole movie. Can somebody teach my cat how to do that? Pathology contains one of my favorite concepts in a horror film. Medical student Ted Gray graduates at the top of his class and quickly joins an elite pathology program. Other top students invite Ted into their little circle, and he quickly learns a deadly secret. These disturbed motherfuckers like playing a game where they take turns trying to commit the perfect, undetectable murder. Then the others compete to determine the victim's cause of death. It's really kind of fucked up. They mock these dead bodies, they have sex near them, they're wrecking them into walls. It's like the perfect mix of comedy and what the fuckisms.
Pathology really just leans into exactly what it is, top tier 2000s trash horror. If you want to be disturbed but also kind of turned on by a horror movie, this is a way to go. This is a very horny movie. There's a sex scene like every 10 minutes, it seems, which, dare I say, might actually be the movie's biggest downfall. If someone took this concept today and removed some of the sudden hormonal urges, it could do really well. But what we have for now is this Pathology from 2008, and this movie fucks. Bloodfest is a fun meta horror from 2018. I know I said meta horror, and that might make you cringe these days as that subgenre gets played out and comes across as cringy in a lot of instances, but they read the line in a respectful way here, never pushing it over the edge, in my opinion. Fans flock to a festival celebrating the most iconic horror movies only to discover that the charismatic showman behind the event has a diabolical agenda. As festival goers start dying off, 3 teenagers must battle through various madmen to survive. So the host of the event reveals that he wants to make a horror movie, but that includes eliminating the attendees in gruesome and bloody ways. The film touches on nearly every horror trope imaginable, so they don't lock themselves into any one villain type or trope, so it kind of does become a hot mess. This will obviously be grouped with other amusement park themed horror films like Haunt, Hellfest, Funhouse Massacre, so if you like those types of films, this is definitely worth checking out. This horror flick is definitely dripping in cheese, but if you go in expecting that, it can be quite enjoyable. It's kind of like a love letter to the very genre in which it resides, with a few homages to classic horror movies to spot if you look closely enough. Bloodfest won't haunt you for days afterwards, but in the moment, it's a fun ride. Split Second is a slept-on sci-fi horror gem from the early 90s that blends dystopian noir, buddy cop chaos, and a monster movie into one gloriously weird ride. Set in a flooded, climate-ravaged future London, that future being 2008, it stars Rutger Hauer as a chain-smoking, gun-toting detective haunted by his partner's death, and the inhuman killer that might be responsible. He teams up with a straight-laced rookie, and together they descend into the city's underbelly chasing something that's definitely not human. So he's teaming up with this rookie, giving us a classic buddy cop setup, but with more of that neo-noir, cyberpunk type of vibe, and it delivers on that premise every second of the way. This movie is packed with alien-inspired creature horror, outrageous one-liners, and gunfights that make no sense, and that's exactly the point. It's dirty, stylish, and just unhinged enough to be memorable. Split Second is kind of like the distant cousin of Blade Runner, and though it won't blow your socks off like Blade Runner, Terminator, or Dark City, you can think of it as the weird nerdy kid who hung out with those flicks. Vincent D'Onofrio stars as a serial killer in Chained from 2012, where he kidnaps a young boy after murdering his mother, and then raises him to be his accomplice. After years in captivity, the boy must choose between escaping or following in his captor's bloody footprints. This movie was actually directed by Jennifer Lynch, who is the daughter of possibly the best filmmaker ever, David Lynch, R.I.P. That being said, don't expect this to be some sort of David Lynch knockoff type of film. Now, Chained definitely gets lost in D'Onofrio's huge and impressive catalog of characters he portrays, everything from Fisk in recent Daredevil content back to Private Pile and Full Metal Jacket back in 1987. It's a shame though, because his portrayal of the serial killer in Chained is chilling and relentless. So usually serial killer movies only subject us to witness these monsters doing their thing, but Chained takes it a step forward and makes us watch Bob forcefully try to mold his replacement. This twist on the subgenre is unnerving, intense, and tough to watch at times. The movie is an addicting character study, and there is an absolute gut punch of a twist in this one that you won't see coming. Expect a sad, bleak, depressing story through and through if you dive into this film. And the last thing I'll say, Chained proves that women make some of the best horror movies, and if you've never been anxious about a cab ride or an Uber driver before, you just might be after watching this one. We are finishing this list off in kind of a unique way today, as I have a documentary to suggest to you all called Killer Legends. Delving into our collective nightmares, this horror documentary investigates the origins of our most terrifying urban legends and the true stories that may have inspired them. This doc is directed by Joshua Zeman, who co-directed a different documentary called Cropsy. The urban legends that Zeman explores in the film are some of the creepiest. We're talking about the clown in the back seat, the babysitter and the man upstairs, the poisoned Halloween candy, and the hook-handed killer. But instead of just retelling these stories, Killer Legends asks,
Where did they come from? And even more disturbingly, what if they were true? The film investigates actual crimes and cases that might have inspired these legends, blending crime scene details, archival footage, and interviews in a way that feels both journalistic and eerily cinematic. It's like Unsolved Mysteries meets creepypasta, but grounded in cold, hard facts. Killer Legends is a very engaging documentary. It's very informational, although the stories will probably feel very familiar to you if you're a horror veteran. Still fun to throw on if you don't want to have to pay attention to a plot, or maybe as background while you're doing chores around the house. If you love haunted house horror, No One Makes It Out Alive delivers nightmare fuel in spades. The film follows Ambar, an undocumented immigrant who moves into a creepy boarding house in search of a better life. But the house is far from welcoming. As Ambar begins experiencing terrifying hallucinations and ghostly whispers, she realizes she's trapped in something far more sinister than she ever imagined. With brilliant atmosphere, unsettling visuals, and truly horrifying creature design, this film builds its terror slowly before plunging into full-blown Lovecraftian horror in its final act. If you like His House or The Autopsy of Jane Doe, No One Makes It Out Alive will absolutely get under your skin. If the Blair Witch Project and Midsommar had a terrifying love child, it would be The Ritual. The film follows a group of friends who embark on a hiking trip through Swedish wilderness, hoping to honor a fallen friend. But when they take a shortcut through an ancient forest, they begin experiencing nightmarish visions, strange symbols, and the feeling that something is watching them. The deeper they go, the more they realize they're not alone. A supernatural presence lurks among the trees, something ancient, powerful, and hungry. The cinematography is breathtaking, the tension is relentless, and the creature design in the third act is next level terrifying. It's an image you won't soon forget. If you love folk horror, psychological terror, and stories about man versus nature, The Ritual is a modern horror gem that you need to watch. Zombies might feel played out, but #Alive proves that there's still life, or unlife, in the genre. This is a South Korean horror thriller that takes the classic zombie survival formula and adds a fresh, modern spin to it. The story follows Jun Woo, a young man who wakes up to find that his entire city has fallen to a zombie outbreak, and he's trapped alone in his high-rise apartment. With no food, no internet, and no way to contact the outside world, he's forced to survive completely cut off from humanity. But when he spots another survivor in a neighboring building, he realizes there may still be hope. There just may be some hope. What makes #Alive stand out is its claustrophobic tension. Instead of focusing on like a big group fighting off the undead, the film zeroes in on one person, completely isolated, trying to stay alive as the world collapses around him. It's a survival horror nightmare with some brutally intense action scenes, emotional gut punches, and just enough dark humor to balance the terror. If you loved movies like Train to Busan or I Am Legend, #Alive is a must-watch. All right, this movie is my Hear Me Out. Choose or Die is not a great movie by any means. Let me lead with that, but I love the premise and it was a fun movie to watch. Plus, it's got a cameo from Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund. This one stars Iola Evans and Asa Butterfield, who play Kayla and Isaac, two friends who happen upon an old retro 80s computer game that claims there's a large cash prize for completing the game, and they decide to take a chance on it in case it hasn't been claimed. However, instead of heading on a journey of newfound wealth, the game curses Kayla and thrusts her into a deadly game of choose your own adventure. Kayla and Isaac must learn how to defeat the curse before it takes everything away from Kayla, everything that she's been fighting to save. Evans and Butterfield carry the movie with their acting as they play the awkward one-sided love interest perfectly, and like I said, the premise is very interesting, to me anyway. I love horror movies based on games. It could have been done a bit better. The writing and the plot definitely kind of fall apart in the third act, but I personally enjoyed watching this one. And again, you gotta love a Robert Englund cameo. Again, don't expect a tight script or amazing special effects when going into this one, but watch it if you're just looking for a fun movie to pass the time. Alright, look.
Thai horror is criminally underrated, and the Death Whisperer movies should be on your watch list. In the first movie, the elder brother of a young girl returns to his hometown to find that his sister is behaving very differently due to a bizarre illness. And the way the sister got cursed is she saw something really creepy in the woods, seemingly. And so now the brother must fight for his sister's survival. It also kind of seems like there's been this curse thrust on the family, and so the brother just needs to find out what's going on and how they defeat this entity that is looming over his sister now. So can his sister be saved, or will there be this doom looming over his family for the rest of their lives? If you enjoyed the first one, watch the sequel as well, as it's a direct continuation of the story. I might be the only one who thinks this, but the main dude is kind of giving young Bruce Campbell vibes. Anyone else? Thai horror is a little wacky, but still a fun watch. These movies go hard, and they're pretty bloody and gory too. If you love Asian horror like The Grudge or The Wailing, both movies are worth checking out. If you love high-intensity survival horror, Don't Move is about to be your next obsession. Don't Move came out last year in 2024, and it was criminally slept on. In Don't Move, we follow a grieving woman who is trying to deal with the loss of her son, who encounters a stranger who injects her with a paralytic agent. What does that mean? Well, according to him, within 15 minutes, her entire body is going to shut down, and then I guess we can assume he's going to do terrible things to her. Don't worry though, this movie isn't just 15 minutes long, it's an hour and a half, so obviously more happens. Maybe we get a little bit before he injects her, maybe we get some of the aftermath. You'll have to watch to find out, but this one definitely stands out as worth your time amongst all the junk that you can find on Netflix. Don't Move flirts with psychological horror, survival horror, and revenge horror all in one go, so go give it a shot if that sounds like something you'll enjoy. This is like one of the biggest blockbusters of the last couple of years. Monster horror doesn't get bigger or better than Godzilla -1. This kaiju masterpiece brings Godzilla back to his horrifying roots, portraying him as an unstoppable force of destruction in post-war Japan. Unlike recent Hollywood Godzilla movies, this one focuses on human survival and the fear of an enemy that can't be stopped. The destruction is breathtaking, which is kind of a weird way to put that. The story is emotional, and Godzilla himself is absolutely terrifying. It might seem odd to think that you'll be crying at the end of a Godzilla film, but Godzilla -1 absolutely will do that to you. This is just one of the best movies that has come out in the past couple of years, horror or non-horror, honestly. People were raving about it when it came out. They were hungry for a digital and a physical release, and yeah, now you can just go flip it on Netflix and watch it. If you're a fan of creature horror, Godzilla -1 is a must-watch.
Alright, it looks like Netflix is being overrun by zombies this month, as Train to Busan is also currently streaming on the platform. Train to Busan is a cut above the rest. The South Korean horror film is intense, emotional, and somehow finds a way to make a genre that often feels played out feel fresh, grounded, and devastating. The setup is simple. A workaholic father and his young daughter board a train from Seoul to Busan just as a zombie outbreak begins to spread. What starts as a routine ride turns into a high-speed nightmare with infected passengers multiplying by the minute. But what really sets this film apart isn't just the action, it's the heart. Every character feels real, every sacrifice hurts, and the film isn't afraid to explore class dynamics, social selfishness, and the fragility of human decency when the world falls apart. A lot of South Korean horror films hold these themes, so there's no surprise there. And the zombies here are fast, twitchy, and terrifying. The train setting makes every encounter feel very claustrophobic and urgent, and the pacing never lets up. It's pretty much Snowpiercer meets World War Z, but with a little bit more soul. And that ending, it'll wreck you in the best way. Train to Busan is one of the most emotionally powerful horror films of the last decade, and now that it's streaming on Netflix this month, it's the perfect time to finally see what all the hype is about. Hard Eyes is exactly what it sounds like, a horror movie where love gets dangerous fast. Dropping on Netflix just ahead of summer, this original film perfectly blends the slasher and rom-com genres. For the past several years, the Hard Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. This Valentine's Day, no couple is safe, and it appears that now our main character, Allie, is the masked killer's new obsession. I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Director Josh Rubin, who directed and starred in Scare Me, and also directed Werewolves Within, brings us a rom-com slasher that hits all the right notes on both sides of the coin here. It's hilarious, cheesy, and perfectly gory. The comedy isn't the only thing that makes Hard Eyes stand out here. Its modern digital age creep factor does too. Social media plays a role, DMs, TikToks, location tracking. It's not just about being watched, it's about being known, and once the killer has their hard eyes on you, there's no escaping. The framework of the movie is also a classic whodunit, which I'm a very big fan of, where you don't really know who to trust and you're guessing who the killer is the entire time. I truly believe Hard Eyes has birthed a new iconic villain, and I could see it being the best traditional slasher of the year. You won't regret checking out Hard Eyes, especially with a magnetic cast that includes Mason Gooding, Olivia Holt, Jordana Brewster, and Devon Sawa.
Every once in a while we get lucky and a found footage film comes along and just knocks our socks off. And that's exactly what Incantation did for me. I watched it and now I need new socks. This is a Taiwanese horror film about a woman named Lee who was cursed after breaking a religious taboo 6 years ago. And now she must protect her daughter from the consequences of her actions. This is the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film to date, a list that I have done zero research on, but I'm sure it means something. Obviously, you've got to be a fan of foreign horror to enjoy this one, but if you're like me and you're always trying to look for those found footage horror gems, this one is for you. When Asian horror hits, it hits. And there's another great, certainly more popular found footage horror film that you can stream over on Netflix right now, but we'll get to that later on in the video. It's everybody's favorite horror subgenre, movies named after shapes. Circle is an underrated gem. It's low-key, it's low budget, it's all filmed in one location, which is impressive, and it doesn't have any big-name actors tied to it. I didn't recognize anyone in this film. But 50 strangers all mysteriously wake up in this room together. They're standing on these red circles, and whenever they try to step out of the circle, there's a little warning, and if they completely try to leave those circles, they go bye-bye. On top of that, every 2 minutes or so, a person at random is chosen to be killed, but they soon find out that they can kind of decide as a group who dies. And it turns into this great social commentary about how we as a society view others and how we perceive others to be more worthy of living or dying based on things like race, age, or gender. So if you like your psychological horror with a side of social commentary, Circle is going to be great for you. Jaws is a classic. Everybody knows Jaws. It's about the big fish, Mr. Jaws himself, as he terrorizes the beaches of Amity Island. I don't have much to say about this one because you probably already know about it. It is worth saying that it still holds up. It's definitely still a good watch these days in case you're worried about it aging poorly. But it's a lot of people's favorite horror movie, so now you know where to stream it. I think Jaws 2 and 3 are on Netflix as well, so you can go ahead and have yourself a little mini Shark Week. Also, please, if you ever hear or see or read anybody try and say that Jaws isn't a horror movie, you can tell them to go and then and their and then stick it up there. Thanks. If you're looking for a horror movie with a side of teen comedy, press play on The Babysitter. This is a fun one. It's a great one to watch with friends. It stars Samara Weaving, and there's even a sequel on Netflix too that you can check out if you enjoy this one. A piece of information that I find interesting about this is that it's written by Brian Duffield, who wrote Underwater, one of my favorite underrated horror movies in recent years. And he also wrote No One Will Save You, which is a movie that I did not like, but also got universal praise. So it's kind of like 50-50 for me personally with him. But universally, I think that he's regarded as one of the better horror writers in recent memory. So Cole is a freshman in high school. He's only got like 2 friends, and one of them is his babysitter, and the other friend teases him about his babysitter all the time. So one night, Cole is being watched by the babysitter as his parents go out on a date, and his friend texts him and says something like, "Hey, you should try and see what the babysitter gets up to when she thinks you're asleep." Okay, creep. So Cole obviously does what his friend asks him to do and pretends to fall asleep and goes to investigate what the babysitter is up to when she thinks he's asleep. And this leads to him finding out that she's part of a satanic cult that wants to kill him. So it's kind of good luck that his friend told him to be a creep and do that. It's an absolutely bonkers plot, but like I said, it's a fun one. Probably prefer to watch it with a group of friends. You've probably heard a lot of buzz around this new Netflix film called It's What's Inside, but should you give it a chance? My vote is yes, obviously, because it's in this video. I was pretty skeptical about this one, and I wouldn't exactly call it horror, but it is a good sci-fi thriller. Essentially, a group of friends gather for this pre-wedding party get-together type thing, and one of the estranged guests lets them know that he has this device that can help them switch bodies if they want to, and so they decide to play a little game with it, and
Basically, you switch bodies, and then if you get outed as like someone can guess that you're inside someone else's body, you're out, and then then there's a winner eventually, and they decide to do a couple rounds of that. And as you can guess with most sci-fi mind fuckery, things get a little twisted. It's a really interesting plot, and the style of this film is what sticks out. There's a great use of color throughout the film that helps you discern between who is like the actual physical body and who's mentally inside of the body, if that makes any sense. And the cinematography, aside from the color, is great as well. The editing is on point. That's definitely what's going to stick out in your mind from this film. And this one you may need to rewatch a time or two to really get things straight in your head.
Azrael is a Shudder original that is currently streaming on Hulu, and this is a fun, unique, crazy horror movie. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, and Samara Weaving is part of a cult who are required to have their vocal cords removed, so they're unable to speak. That's right. The unique factor in this film is that there is no dialogue. There might be a line or two spoken by a certain character, but other than that, everybody just shuts the fuck up. In a world where no one speaks, a devout female-led community hunts down a young woman who has escaped imprisonment. Recaptured, Azrael is due to be sacrificed to an ancient evil in the wilderness, but fights for her own survival. So because of the lack of dialogue, the film could easily fall apart, but the sound design is on point. I hope the sound team got paid well on this, because in place of dialogue we get weird creature noises, creepy wind to build that atmosphere, and some truly unsettling horrors to make your skin crawl and drive home the fact that this is a horrifying, terrible world that our characters now live in. There are some aspects of this film that reminded me of The Descent, others that made me think of A Quiet Place, and of course 2 other biblical horror movies that came out last year along with Azrael, which would be The First Omen and Immaculate. The star of Azrael is Samara Weaving, and her uncanny ability to make any movie interesting just by filling the screen is clearly evident in Azrael. I don't think I could name another lead that would carry this concept as well as Samara Weaving. And yes, we do get a blood-covered Samara Weaving. This movie is action-packed, and it takes risks that a lot of other religious horror is too scared to take. And if The First Omen and Immaculate hadn't come out last year, this would have been much more impactful. All 3 of these movies are coincidentally available on Hulu, so it could make for a godly triple feature. So After Midnight is an indie horror romantic drama film about a man whose girlfriend up and leaves him and only leaves behind a cryptic note. She says she had to go away for a while, and that's pretty much it. His comfy life and sanity begin to crack, and he starts to lose it a little bit. And on top of that heartbreak, something mysterious from the woods surrounding his property has begun trying to break into his house every night. This has non-linear storytelling to it. It cuts back and forth between these special moments between the two of them throughout their whole relationship, and then present day and the things that he's dealing with right now. It's definitely a cosmic horror similar to The Endless, Resolution, Spring, with a touch of creature feature. It takes place in an isolated rural town, so if you like those types of movies, this is right up your alley. It does have the same team that brought us Spring, The Endless, and The Battery. Jeremy Gardner takes up the responsibility of directing and lead actor, as he also does in The Battery. Justin Benson also stars as a cop in the film. It's a bit on the slower end and may not be straight up horror, but the underlying mystery is going to keep you hooked and draw you in throughout the entire 80-minute runtime. So the third act will either make or break the film for you, and for me, it made it. There's a dialogue between 2 characters that lasts, damn near 10 minutes maybe, and it's all done in one continuous shot. Amazing performances here, and it made the movie for me. The creature design is unique and otherworldly, and yeah, the mystery itself just had me hooked the entire time, and this went places that I didn't expect it to. I thought I knew what was happening at one point, but then something completely different happened. So yeah, if you like that rural setting and kind of mysterious, I get the romantic vibes is what I'm gonna go with here. The crux of the movie is the 2 lead characters' relationship. But yeah, this is just horror indie filmmaking at its finest. It's scary at times, a couple jump scares. Like I said, the creature design is amazing, and yeah, it's a lot. There's a big character study in it as well, and yeah, I don't know. Just go check it out. I really enjoyed this more than I thought it would. If sleepwalking episodes terrify you, then you should definitely check out Sleep. This is a South Korean film, so you know it's going to be a banger. It's the directorial debut of Jason Yu, and let me tell you, this is an impressive piece of work for a new director. So Sleep is about a young woman who is pregnant and dealing with the fact that her husband has been experiencing these sleepwalking episodes, and they seem to be getting more and more intense and nightmarish. She wants to stop the horror before he ends up seriously harming himself or his family. The man is an actor, and she's kind of in the corporate world, and he's a little bit more focused on his career as an aspiring actor, so he kind of treats it as like no biggie, and of course doesn't take it as seriously as the wife does. This is a slow burn psychological horror film that kind of becomes a battle between trying to convince someone that something is real and them not really believing you, and the biggest issue becomes, is Hyun-soo actually having this disorder that the doctors have diagnosed him with, or is he possessed by a now deceased former neighbor? That's what it kind of becomes. Is it possession or is it actually sickness? The couple each have different ideas about how they should tackle this issue that they're facing, and the leads in this are amazing, by the way, and unfortunately the lead actor, Lee Sun-kyun, is no longer with us. He also starred in Parasite, and he gives a hell of a performance in this flick alongside Jung Yoo-mi. Fair warning, if you don't like bad things happening to dogs in your movies, stay away from this one, or at least check doesthedogdie.com to see when you should skip. It's pretty mild, but you do see the body of a deceased dog. Lastly, to put a pin in this movie, this is probably the only movie in recent memory that has the ability to put PowerPoints back on the map. If you know, you know. Something in the Dirt is the latest full-length feature from one of my favorite filmmaking duos in Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, creators of films like Synchronic, The Endless, and Resolution, and they even produced After Midnight, which we've already talked about here. They helped produce that, and like I said, Justin Benson stars in that film. If you haven't watched anything by them yet, you need to, because they have entirely unique visions and directing styles. They've really carved out their own little niche in the movie-making world. So when neighbors John and Levi witness supernatural events in their LA apartment building, they realize that documenting the paranormal could inject some fame and fortune into their wasted lives. As with most of Benson and Moorhead's films, don't expect a whole lot to be resolved necessarily. They definitely love living in the cosmic horror space where a lot is left to the imagination, and it's kind of a toss-up between what's real and what's not quite real. The duo also stars the two leads in the film, as can be predicted, and like always, they do a wonderful job of playing these conflicted characters who don't seem quite satisfied with life and are wanting to find a higher purpose. And in Something in the Dirt, they're doing that by trying to capture these supernatural happenings for their documentary, while also falling down a rabbit hole leading to potential conspiracies and danger that they put themselves in. If you love sci-fi horror, conspiracy theories, and inexplicable scientific events, you gotta check out Something in the Dirt. Side note, I feel like such a loser not realizing that Benson and Moorhead are now working on Marvel projects like Loki and Moon Knight. I've been a bit removed from the Marvel universe for a bit now because of the fatigue I was getting from that universe and those movies, but it's cool to see this unique filmmaking duo getting those huge projects and opportunities. Would you save your bullies' lives if they were in danger? That's the question posed by our next film, Piggy. It's based on a short film of the same name. It's a Spanish film, and the overall theme is basically bully revenge. So all of Sarah's bullies have given her the name Piggy, as you could have guessed by now, and they torment her while she's at the local swimming pool. They even steal her clothes and belongings and make her walk home in just her bathing suit. Real tragic shit here. These bullies are pieces of shit. But on her walk home, she sees one of them bound and bloody in the back of a white van. And the bully inside the van tries yelling to Sarah for help, but Sarah kind of just says like, see you later, fuck off. She does nothing and goes about her day like nothing happened. Now, eventually she's forced to make a decision. Does she allow her bullies to potentially be tortured and murdered, potentially becoming an accomplice to those crimes, or does she try to help? Piggy feels very grounded in reality. A ton of us have dealt with bullying before in our life, so it's very relatable, and it puts a question to the test that I'm sure a lot of us have thought, wishing ill will upon those who do harm to us. The movie isn't inherently scary, it has a slasher vibe to it, and there are a couple of great bloody and gory moments, and it's a captivating thrill ride all throughout. On Hulu, Piggy is available in its original language, Spanish, or you can watch an English dub of it. I, of course, always prefer the original language with subtitles, but to each their own. I have given high praise to New Life a few times on the channel already. But this is the first time that it's streaming in the US. It was on my Netflix video, but that was only for the UK viewers. But now it's on Hulu in the US. In New Life, a woman is on the run trying to make it to the Canadian border, and she thinks that the FBI is after her for murder. But it's hinted in the trailer that they might be after her for a whole different reason. But what could that be? This is essentially like an on-the-run, infected horror movie. I think that gives you enough of the plot without spoiling too much. The standout in this movie is the performances of our two main characters in this one. We've got Haley Aaron as the woman who's on the run and Sonia Wagner as the agent who is trying to catch her. There's lovely performances by them both, and we kind of see this duality between these two characters, and we get to witness this arc that they both experience throughout the movie. If you like action movies where the characters are on the run from the police or any other government body, this is going to be for you. And of course, if you like infected/zombie movies, then you're also going to get a good kick out of this one. This is the first place I've seen this movie streaming in the US, like I said, so definitely jump on that. Hulu subscribers are getting an absolute treat here, as Oddity has escaped the confines of Shudder, which was the only spot you could watch it previously, and this is one of the best horror movies to come out of 2024, and it's a no-brainer to add to your watch list. The film centers on a blind woman who is haunted by the death of her twin sister 1 year prior. She travels to her deceased sister's home to try and figure out who exactly is responsible for her death, and she happens to own an oddity store, so she brings along this creepy wooden statue thing, which is supposed to help her solve the mystery. Oddity is a simple and straightforward story. The tension and atmosphere that this movie conjures is unmatched, if you ask me, and the cinematography and sound design are big proponents of building that tension and atmosphere. The jump scares they utilize in the film are more effective because of this, and they're not just used for a scapegoat for a boring film. The jump scares actually carry the plot forward. Carolyn Bracken does a fantastic job of playing two different characters. She plays the twins. I felt unsettled throughout the whole movie, and the mystery grips you until the very end. Now, one last selling point I'll say is it's a movie that kind of feels like Hereditary and The Lodge had a baby. There's a lot of grief, dread, and just uncanny stillness. We're finishing this list off with a cold one. This one's called No Exit. Stranded at a rest stop in the mountains during a blizzard, a recovering addict discovers a kidnapped child hidden in a car belonging to one of the people inside the building, which sets her on a terrifying struggle to identify who among them is the kidnapper. Thank you for that very long synopsis, IMDb. So this is based on a book, but I haven't read the book. I'm not a big reader, that's why I talk about movies. But if you have read the book, let me know how close the two are and if you enjoyed one over the other. This is a great mystery film, kind of a whodunit, where our main character is trying to read the other characters and figure out who could be a bad person and who has kidnapped this girl. Very suspenseful, very thriller-like. There's only light gore in this one, so it could be perfect to watch with someone who doesn't watch a ton of horror. It's definitely a popcorn horror flick. No Exit nails the one location horror vibes as well and has plenty of twists to keep you guessing the entire time. The performances were all stellar. The lead, Havana Rose Liu, really carries the movie and gives us a marvelous final girl performance. The plot is simple and straightforward. I had a good time with it, so if you want a suspense-filled thriller, put No Exit on tonight. Now, I might get some flack for this, but these days I'd much rather rewatch Evil Dead 2013 than the OG. I'm sorry, I just think it holds up a tiny bit better. If the original Evil Dead is raw, chaotic DIY horror, then Evil Dead 2013 is the polished, bloody nightmare version of that. Honestly, I think calling it a remake is an understatement. It's really more of a reinvention. This was Alien Romulus director Fede Alvarez's feature debut, and it keeps the core premise of the original, of course. A group of friends head to a remote cabin and accidentally unleash demonic forces from the Necronomicon. But instead of going for like laughs and campiness, this version just goes all in on the dread. There's no Ash this time. Instead, we get Mia, a young woman struggling with addiction. The cabin getaway is meant to be like a kind of a little detox for her, but what unfolds is way more horrifying than withdrawal. Once the possession starts, it doesn't let up, and the film pulls zero punches. This thing is soaked in blood, packed with bone-snapping body horror, and unafraid to push viewers right to the edge. And what makes this remake work so well is how it respects the original without copying it. It's brutal, stylish, and filled with practical effects that make every kill feel painfully real. And that final act is just absolutely legendary.
complete with a raining blood finale that cements this film as one of the most metal horror movies ever made. If you had any doubt about remakes being great, this one will change your mind. It's evil, it's dead, and it's everything you want from a modern horror experience. Birth Rebirth is a psychological horror drama inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it's the directorial debut of Laura Moss. In this movie, a socially awkward morgue technician and a single mother who is also a nurse team up to keep a little girl alive. Who's the little girl? Well, it's the single mother's daughter who suddenly died, and the morgue technician has brought her back to life. You know, pretty typical stuff. So while the morgue technician's experiment is technically successful, the two women must still draw from their very different expertise in life to keep the little girl alive. The movie will keep you on the edge of your seat and also make you question your own morality when it comes to your loved ones. Definitely worth a watch right now. I fucking hate spiders, which makes this flick damn near impossible to watch for me. In a rundown apartment complex, a young girl secretly raises a pet spider she found in her building, but as the spider grows quite rapidly, it becomes clear that this isn't just any ordinary arachnid. What starts as an innocent fascination quickly turns into a terrifying nightmare as the creature's hunger becomes insatiable. If Arachnophobia and The Thing had a baby, it would be Sting. Fans of creature features, body horror, and tension-filled thrillers will appreciate the slow build-up and gruesome payoff. This film taps into primal fears, parasitic horror, the loss of control, and the disturbing transformation of something seemingly harmless into a full-blown terror. It's got that 80s B-movie charm, but with a modern bite. I will remind you, if you hate spiders, this one will get under your skin. What You Wish For is a fantastic movie to go into blind. It's about a struggling chef who takes an opportunity presented to him by an old friend where he's invited to Latin America to help cook a meal for the extremely wealthy. Things get dark in more than one way very quickly in this one, and once things start to click, your jaw will be on the floor. It's a beautifully shot film. The location is beautiful. The food is beautiful. If you liked The Menu or Fresh, you'll get a kick out of this film. Although its themes and subject matter are horrific, it's also a pretty funny movie, very much a dark comedy. I thought I could predict a few plot points, but it subverted my expectations. And I love how it explores this crosspoint of being stuck between a rock and a hard place, basically abolishing your inner morals while also kind of getting to live out your dream. It's quite the combo. Little Monsters is for someone who wants a little bit more of a lighthearted vibe. When a washed-up musician chaperones his nephew's school field trip, he never expects a zombie outbreak. Teaming up with an unshakable kindergarten teacher who's played by Lupita Nyong'o, they must protect the kids while keeping the situation lighthearted so the little ones don't freak out. If Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland are your type of horror comedy, then Little Monsters is going to be right up your alley. It's got gore, laughs, and a surprising amount of heart. This movie blends zombie horror with themes of resilience, childhood, innocence, and the absurdity of survival in the face of the undead. It's fun, quirky, and offers a fresh take on the zombie genre. Mr. Crockett's a wild one. This might appeal to parents in the audience. Mr. Crockett is a children's TV show character who kidnaps kids and takes them to his world. And in the movie, we follow this mom as she embarks on a perilous quest to rescue her son, who has been kidnapped by Mr. Crockett. This movie is absolutely bonkers, and you've got to go into it with the right mindset. You can't really take it too seriously. It's campy, but also brutal, and there are all these like demented puppets that Mr. Crockett uses that are from his TV show. Yeah, it's pretty great. Really great practical effects all throughout. It's the directorial debut of Brandon Espy, and the concept came to him after seeing his eldest son obsessively watch Blippi, wondering what it would be like if the character came out of the television set. And honestly, yeah, that is pretty fucking scary. He also drew inspiration from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Nightmare on Elm Street, and you kind of root for the villain in this one. He's got some certain relatable morals behind what he's doing. The social commentary is a bit in your face, but that doesn't mean it's a bad message. Alien Romulus. This was a horror blockbuster from last year. It's got a huge budget, beautiful cinematography. Fede Alvarez did an amazing job. It's here to remind us why we still freak out over space horror, and honestly, it delivers. It's directed again by Fede Alvarez. He did Evil Dead in 2013. He did Don't Breathe. This interquel wedges itself snugly between Alien and Aliens, connecting the Prometheus-era films with those classics. What's the plot? It's about a group of young adults tired of their oppressive lives. They try to escape by scavenging an abandoned spacecraft for cryopods.
But spoiler alert, the spacecraft isn't abandoned. With stunning cinematography and enough paranoia-inducing atmosphere to make you side-eye your own popcorn, Romulus absolutely slays. Let's talk the vibes of the film. The movie keeps you creeped out and on the edge, nailing the tension with a killer combo of lighting, score, and top-tier cinematography. In that third act, it goes full throttle in the best, most unhinged way possible. Not everyone will love where it ends up, but honestly, it's wild, it's bold, and it's going to be debated over beers and Reddit threads for years. Bold moves, Romulus. Bold moves. That said, it's not perfect. The characters make some pretty dumb decisions, yes, even for horror standards. But let's cut them some slack. They're young and they're facing death by alien nightmare. There's also a CGI moment that's so bad it'll kind of make you wince, and there are some fan service lines that try way too hard. But hey, nobody's perfect, and I think that the film's overall vibe is strong enough to forgive those hiccups. My final verdict for Alien from last year was like a 7.5 out of 10 for me. It's a creepy, edge-of-your-seat thrill ride with killer visuals, impeccable creature design, and an ending so bonkers it might just go down in horror history. If you're an Alien fan or just need a good scare in space, don't sleep on this one. I haven't watched it since it was released on Hulu, but apparently the poorly done CGI in the theatrical release has since been corrected, in case that worried you at all. Late Night with the Devil is about a TV talk show host who is obsessed with being the best. In order to try and boost the ratings of his slowly dying talk show, Jack Delroy hosts a special occult-themed episode on Halloween night, with guests ranging from a psychic, a skeptic and former magician, a parapsychologist, author, and his holy grail, a 13-year-old girl who is supposedly possessed by a demonic spirit. Yes, broadcasting it to the world live. We watch the events of the night unfold as Delroy moves from guest to guest and unexplainable events start happening. And then we slowly unravel Jack's backstory and kind of learn some things that may be contributing to said unexplained events. Late Night with the Devil is a little bit found footage, a little bit documentary, a little bit supernatural, and I rarely see hate for it online, so you should definitely check it out. Services like Netflix, Hulu, and Prime Video keep upping their prices. Tubi is just sitting over here like, psst, we got the goods. Yes, the caveat for it being free is that there are ads, but even Netflix and Prime Video have ads now, even on their paid tiers. What a scam. Every time I open the Tubi app, I'm always baffled by how good the horror selection is, and the fact that you don't even need to sign in to watch. But there are a lot of movies on there, so I'm going to help you prevent hours of doom scrolling by giving you 13 amazing horror movies that you can watch for free right now. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you like talking about horror all year long. Hell House LLC. I'm a bit biased here since my favorite subgenre of horror is found footage, but even within that subgenre, it felt like Hell House was a breath of fresh air, and you can watch it for free now on Tubi.
Oh, are there any modern horror movies that are actually scary?
I get this question all the time, and this movie always jumps to the front of my mind when it happens. In Hell House LLC, a group of friends who run a traveling haunted house company decide to set up their next attraction in an abandoned hotel in Abaddon, New York. The crew thinks it's the perfect place for their haunted house because of the dark secrets the hotel holds, but once they get set up, the true terror of the hotel is shown. 5 years after the deadly opening night of Hell House LLC, a documentary crew is now investigating the haunted house where it all took place. All they've had to go on for the past 5 years is a YouTube video from one of the customers and the 911 phone call of that night. But now all of the tapes documenting the days leading up to the opening night have been discovered. And we get to witness the intriguing, chilling build-out of Hell House LLC and discover what happened that fateful night. This movie genuinely just gives me the creeps, and I can't stop watching it either. The acting is top-notch, and in the past decade, this movie has carved out a legacy in the horror genre, spawning 3 sequels that are all worth checking out. Now, you'll probably see that Tubi original logo on Lowlifes and want to give it a hard no, but I highly suggest you reconsider. In Lowlifes, there's a family of 4 who are going on a little road trip in their RV when it unexpectedly shuts down out in the middle of nowhere. And this forces them to stay the night at a rural family's home. This is one of those where it's hard to talk about without spoiling a lot, but the movie takes a lot of twists and turns, doesn't take itself too seriously, and knows how to have fun. The performances are stellar, the writing is witty and clever, and Lowlifes just truly transcends its label as a Tubi original. It's not really like scary per se, and it leans a little bit more into the slasher genre, and it's a gorgeous blend of comedy, gore, and ideal family values. Next up is Frozen, and not the 2013 Disney classic Frozen, but the Frozen movie that Frozen movie is based on, 2010 psychological thriller Frozen. I feel like I've said Frozen a little too many times now. But that was just a bit of a fib. The two movies have nothing to do with each other, but 2010's Frozen is an impressive psychological horror thriller that does a lot with a little. It's a single location film, and it's about three friends who get trapped on a ski lift as an oncoming snowstorm is about to pummel the area. It starts off as an enjoyable young college kids going on a ski trip and just having a good old time type of movie. So we're definitely having a good time up until they get stuck up on that ski lift, which it makes the absolute shift in tone all the more jarring. Three leads that get stuck are two dudes who are longtime friends and then one of their girlfriend. The acting is totally believable, which isn't a surprise coming from Shawn Ashmore, Emma Bell, and Kevin Zegers, I think is how you say his last name. Also, just think of all the things that could go wrong being stranded in the winter wilderness 50 feet above a ski slope with a snowstorm on the way, and those things probably happen in this movie. I was surprised to read that the film was shot entirely practically, so no green screen or CGI, which while watching, I kept asking myself, is this green screen? But apparently not, adding to the impressiveness of this flick. Frozen also has a cameo from Kane Hodder, who is famously known for his cameos in horror movies and playing Jason Voorhees, and this duo with him and the director actually makes another appearance on this list in just a few minutes. Old school American horror. That's the tagline of the first Hatchet movie, and that's exactly what you get here. Just a good old-fashioned slasher filled with brutal, gory kills, dumb young adults, and a horror icon named Victor Crowley, played by Kane Hodder. The Hatchet series is directed by Adam Green, who directed Frozen, which we already talked about, and Hatchet is wildly different than Frozen. When a group of tourists in a New Orleans haunted swamp tour find themselves stranded in the wilderness, their evening of fun and spooks just turns into a horrific nightmare. Enter Victor Crowley, a disfigured, vengeful, swamp-dwelling maniac with a rusted hatchet and an insatiable bloodlust. According to local legend, Crowley was horribly burned and left for dead as a child. Now he hunts anyone who dares step foot in his territory, tearing them apart in some of the most creative and gruesome kills in modern slasher history. Adam Green, the director, had a no CGI rule implemented for post-production, so this is a practical effects extravaganza which will impress you after you've seen some of these kills. Hatchet is perfect for all slasher lovers, and although it's nearly 20 years old now, I still see it overlooked when people talk about great slasher movies. Do you think you could stay awake for over 100 hours? That is what this group of 6 young adults are forced to do during a clinical trial gone wrong in this Irish horror film, Double Blind. The clinical trial starts pretty typically. The subjects are just holed up in this facility and given drugs and basic instructions. However, very quickly, some unexpected side effects appear and the participants are forced to try and stay awake until they can either be saved, find a cure, or escape. For context, in case you don't know, a double-blind study is when neither the subjects nor the doctors know who is getting an actual drug in a trial and who is getting a placebo. And all I'll say is it doesn't seem like that definition is super important to the plot. As you can expect, this lack of sleep brings paranoia, hallucinations, and miscalculated decisions. Not only are the characters paranoid, but we as the viewer are as well, as we don't know who to trust, and we're also trying to piece everything together to figure out what is going on. They try various techniques to try to keep each other awake. For me in college, the threat of getting a penis drawn on your face was enough to keep you awake nearly all night, but the stakes are maybe a little bit higher in this one. Millie Brady plays our main character, Claire. It looks like her biggest role in her career so far has been in the TV show The Last Kingdom, but she fits into the horror genre nicely. She's an extremely believable young adult, desperate for a new beginning, dealing with her past traumas. As the movie progresses and each character slowly loses their mind, the filmmakers take more and more creative risks with the cinematography, projecting this trippy, surreal world on the viewers. It kind of reminded me of Under the Skin sometimes with its imagery. Although I loved the way the movie was shot, I think that they could have taken even more risks if they wanted to. There's a bit of blood in the movie, but not a whole lot of gore. It's not over the top in that sense at all, and most of the scariness or dread would come from the psychological hell that these characters are put through, and the atmosphere that the movie creates. The music and sound design do a fantastic job of building that atmosphere, and it's a huge component that keeps you hooked the entire time. The biggest theme that I grasped from this is the concept of taking advantage of poor, homeless, desperate young people who don't know any better. There are at least a couple of deaths that are out of the box or unexpected, which are worth the watch in and of themselves. My least favorite thing about this movie is how little info there is online about it. hardly any trivia or BTS. Once the credits rolled, I just wanted to keep exploring the mind and world of the filmmakers. I can't wait to see what the director Ian Hunt Duffy does next. You'll see this listed as a 2023 film and a 2024 film. It had a festival run back in 2023, but didn't get a theatrical release until February of 2024. Double Blind has gotten mostly positive feedback from both critics and audiences, so this is an absolute no-brainer to add to your watch list tonight. You might also hear Incident in a Ghostland referred to as just Ghostland, but when you're looking for it on streaming, it will be titled Incident in a Ghostland. It's an underrated psychological horror gem that came out in 2018, and it's directed by Pascal Laugier. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, but he's the guy who directed Martyrs and The Tall Man. Now, the movie is disturbing in its own right, but not nearly on the same level as Martyrs, but there are similar themes and situations now that I think about it. I don't really remember The Tall Man. Is that the one with Jessica Biel? I think it is the one with Jessica Biel. I know I have watched it, but I have no memory of it. Was it good? Maybe that's the answer to my question if I don't remember it. A mother of two who inherits a house is confronted with murderous intruders on the first night in their new house and fights for her daughter's lives. 16 years later, when the daughters reunite at the house, things get really strange. This movie is absolutely thrilling and disturbing. There's a few good jump scares in there, all pretty predictable. But it starts off as a very straightforward popcorn flick, but the movie takes some turns that really pull you into the story, and you'll find yourself glued to the screen. If you decide to watch Ghostland, you'll explore themes of psychological trauma and paranoia, coping with loss, and I feel like this needs a trigger warning as well for sexual violence involving teenage children. A haunting behind-the-scenes piece of trivia is that on the last day of shooting, one of the main actresses experienced facial disfigurement after she crashed through a glass door. That's fucking gnarly. She subsequently sued the production company, understandably, and the case was settled out of court. Director duo Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead brought us The Endless back in 2017, and it's a fantastic sci-fi cosmic horror movie. As is common in their films, Benson and Moorhead also star as our main characters, these two brothers. Now, as kids, they escaped a UFO death cult, and now they're seeking answers after an old videotape surfaces and brings them back to where they began. As they revisit this cult that they escaped, things just seem kind of off, and they can't really put their finger on why. Straight up, I'll say this movie leaves you with a lot of questions and will require a rewatch to really catch everything and put the pieces together. It's just a mindfuck. You've got like time warping, this cult mystery going on, and it just turns into cosmic horror juiciness by the end. If you're a fan of Benson and Moorhead's other work like Spring, Synchronic, Resolution, or There's Something in the Dirt, this one is a must-watch. The Endless is an indie flick and definitely feels like it, so if you don't like low-budget indie movies, skip this one, but if you don't mind that, it's definitely worth a watch. Vampire movies are usually fast, feral, and filled with blood-soaked action, but Let the Right One In takes a very different approach, one that's haunting, emotional, and deeply unsettling. In this Swedish horror film, we follow Oscar, a lonely, bullied 12-year-old boy who spends his days dreaming of revenge against his tormentors. One night he meets Ely, a mysterious girl who only comes out at night, doesn't seem to feel the cold, and has a dark secret. You guessed it, she's a vampire. We watch how Oscar and Ely's relationship develops over time in the form of a chilling, slow-burn winterscape. Though it has that slow-burn feel to it, and the runtime is nearly 2 hours, the film absolutely earns both of those characteristics. It really takes the time to flesh out its characters so that we get to know them and care about them. And we slowly learn exactly what Ely is and what that means in this world. And Let the Right One In just delivers a quiet, poetic horror story filled with tragic beauty, eerie suspense, and moments of shocking brutality. Some people think that there's a lot of heart behind the movie and that it's adorable or sweet, but it's actually quite the opposite when you think about what Ely really is. The cinematography does a masterful job of painting a picture of loneliness and isolation, and the performances of the two child actors here in the film are fantastic as well. The movie could have easily fallen apart without these two aspects, but they absolutely nail it. This is a perfect viewing for the wintertime, and yes, there is an American remake called Let Me In, but it's not nearly as good as the original. I put off watching Butterfly Kisses for far too long, and it blew my mind. It's a found footage movie about a found footage movie. Let me explain. So Gavin is an ambitious filmmaker who discovers some old videotapes that were recorded 10 years previously by two film students. They were doing like an expose on a local urban legend called Peeping Tom. Now, who's Peeping Tom? The urban legend is that you go to this certain tunnel in their town and stare down the tunnel for an hour without blinking, and Peeping Tom reveals himself to you. But then every time you blink, he gets closer and closer, ultimately getting so close that he scares you to death. Now, that premise alone should sell the movie, but there's so much more to it, and there's a cameo from the director of Blair Witch Project in this one as well. Part of Butterfly Kiss's genius is the fact that it's analyzing found footage films while also being a found footage film, so it's very meta and also deconstructs the subgenre. This is a slow burn as we are slowly fed bits and pieces of the story in the form of those original tapes, and things slowly start to click. It's very much a thriller in that aspect, but there are like a handful of scenes that really carve in that horror aspect too. If you like this movie, check out my full review of it where I go way more in depth into this movie in my review that I'll link up here. Bound. This is for the folks who are looking for something really fucked up, and don't worry, I'm not going to judge you if that's what you're seeking. So Marty is a shy 5th grader who finds out that his brother is a serial killer. The opening line of the film is, "My brother keeps a human head in his closet," and it just sets the stage for the film perfectly. Now, stay with this one. The acting in the beginning has a high chance of turning you off, but I have a feeling that if you're seeking a movie like this, you're not looking for Oscar-worthy performances. It's very much worth sitting through the acting. So Marty is also obsessed with horror movies and graphic novels, and he doesn't want to tell anyone about this head that he found for fear of what his brother might do. And I think it's pretty obvious that he also has this like morbid curiosity as well, which I think is a common trait among dedicated horror fans like you and me. While the movie is disturbing and there are some intense scenes, I also think that the way people talk about this movie online overhypes it a bit, as far as the gore goes anyway. So a lot of the unease and dread from this movie doesn't come from constant stomach-churning kills, but rather the context in which things are happening. So there are two scenes in the movie that I can think of being really disturbing, and one of them is really just implied violence rather than something we actually see on screen. At its core, you could look at Found as a coming-of-age story, I guess, but don't let that overshadow the disturbing and brutal nature of the film. Deathgasm is a New Zealand comedy horror, and it's great for metalheads. This might be the most metal horror movie I've ever seen, and as a guitar player myself, I loved seeing a horror movie centered around a metal band. So Brody moves to a new town to live with his uncle after his dad dies and his mom is institutionalized, and he's just this sort of outcast because of his metalhead lifestyle. He befriends a few other outcasts and they form a band together and call it Deathgasm, all uppercase because lowercase is for pussies. The band acquires an ancient piece of sheet music, which is how they accidentally summon this evil entity. The movie is very bloody and has some gnarly kills, as any metal horror movie should. There's a subtle rickroll, which is hilarious, and there are plenty of references to bands like Brain Drill and Cannibal Corpse. Deathgasm is a damn good time and deserves way more love. The best time to see this movie would have been when it got a theatrical release like 10 years ago, and the next best time is right now. These reviews put it perfectly and should be the final sell for you to watch the movie. This one says, hilarious splatfest for gorehounds with a very twisted sense of humor. This reviewer says, Metalocalypse meets Dead Alive / Brain Dead. And lastly, the most fun I've had since Dead Snow 2. Go watch it. Inside will absolutely traumatize you, and it's on par with Found as the most disturbing movies on this list. We're heading over to France to talk about this insane horror flick from 2007. 4 months after the death of her husband, a woman on the brink of motherhood is tormented in her home by a strange woman who wants her unborn baby. Tormented is a bit of an understatement, honestly. Our pregnant main character Sarah goes through possibly the most brutal night any character has ever gone through in a horror movie. This weird creepy lady goes to great lengths to try and get Sarah's baby, and Sarah must fight for survival to protect herself and the child. She's due to give birth like the very next morning. Now for this one, you do have to suspend disbelief with some of the events that happen in this movie, but that's part of watching a movie, particularly horror, right? Sometimes you just gotta accept the rules and let these things happen on screen without being nitpicky all the time. So trigger warning for lots of brutal, gory stuff happening around a woman being pregnant. I think that's as clear a trigger warning as I can give. Inside is also going to scratch the home invasion itch if you're in the mood for that type of movie as well. Just fair warning, it is relentless, it has shocking violence, and once it gets going, it doesn't really let up. This flick got the Martyrs treatment by getting an American remake, which I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm
Sure, it's not nearly as brutal, so maybe if the storyline sounds interesting to you, but you don't think you could stomach the original French film, watch the American remake instead. It was a straight-to-digital release back in 2016, and that one can be found on Prime Video.
Possessor is the perfect movie for starting out this list because I think it's a very often overlooked sci-fi horror movie that I adore. It feels very dystopian and mysterious, and the premise is really interesting. Essentially, in this world, scientists have developed a brain implant technology that allows people to possess other people's bodies. And this elite assassin uses that technology to take out targets without getting caught. So she's basically a body-hopping hitwoman. She tries to hijack the body of a dude played by Christopher Abbott, who recently starred in Wolfman, and he internally fights back more than the assassin is used to, making it difficult for her to complete the job. The opening scene of this movie sets the stage in bloody fashion and lets you know that director Brandon Cronenberg is not messing around. And yes, you heard me right. Possessor was directed by Brandon Cronenberg, who is the son of David Cronenberg. And I'm pretty impressed because this was just his second feature film and it was an ambitious effort. There's definitely blood and gore in this one with hints of body horror and surrealism. The performances of the cast, which include Andrea Riseborough, Christopher Abbott, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Sean Bean, are just magnetic. The cinematography is captivating as well. We are kind of thrust into the lives of these characters without much backstory, so if you're someone who relies on a heavy connection to characters in a movie, that might be the only drawback to this one here. Where many horror movies fall apart in their final act, Possessor does the exact opposite and sticks the landing. You'll know what I mean when you watch it. Monolith is pure psychological slow burn sci-fi horror, and it's entirely carried by one actress, Lily Sullivan, who you might recognize from Evil Dead Rise. She plays a disgraced journalist trying to revive her career through a conspiracy podcast. She stumbles onto a story about a strange black object, an artifact that seems to randomly appear in people's lives and bring with it something they can't really explain. They get these senses of guilt, they hear these voices, they see these hallucinations. Whatever it is, it's invasive and possibly sentient. This is another single location film. We spend the entire movie at her parents' house, which is where she's hiding while she's kind of under scrutiny for a past story she covered. The story keeps you hooked as Sullivan is super determined to figure out whether this conspiracy is a hoax or not. Monolith is minimalist, eerie, and plays out like a horror audiobook you can't turn off. It's severely underrated. I feel like I had to do some pretty deep research to even find this movie when I watched it, so I thought I'd do you all a favor and introduce you to this amazing sci-fi horror movie as well. Starting off with 3 slasher flicks that I think you need to go watch right now, especially if you've never seen them. First is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know this is a given for a lot of you, but I've encountered a lot of horror fans recently who have not seen the original, and I think that is a horror sin if you ask me. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released in 1974, and it set the bar sky high for slashers moving forward. The movie still holds up because of its gritty realism and relentless terror. Tell me this movie doesn't still terrify you, and I'll tell you you're full of shit. The story begins with a group of friends who are going on a little road trip through rural Texas, and eventually they get stranded and they're looking for help. They end up at an isolated farmhouse looking for assistance, but unbeknownst to them, this is the home of Leatherface, a chainsaw-wielding maniac and his twisted family who have a taste for human flesh. Like I said, this movie is very gritty and real. It spawned so many sequels and remakes. You don't necessarily have to see them all, but the original for sure should be at the top of your list. And also, am I alone in this? I think that Leatherface, when compared to the other horror icons like Ghostface, Michael Myers, Pinhead, Jason Voorhees, he gets like the least amount of love. Am I alone in that? Sleepaway Camp is a cult classic. It's a bizarre horror film that isn't just your run-of-the-mill slasher, although its sequels do follow the formula a little bit more closely. The original follows 2 kids, a shy and reserved Angela and her overprotective cousin Ricky, as they're sent to Camp Arawak for the summer. And then soon after arriving, there's a series of brutal and mysterious deaths, and so they must figure out who's doing it and why and all that good stuff. This movie is filled with bizarre acting and cheesy lines, but it's still so great and amazing and fun.
This guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet. Come on, Bill.
Everything leads to a jaw-dropping climax that will leave you reeling and will be imprinted into your mind forever, like it has been for so many of us already.
High Tension is also known as Switchblade Romance, and it's a French gory slasher that is one of the most controversial horror films in history, and that's mostly because of its ending. It's about two women, Marie and Alex, who just want a quiet, peaceful weekend getaway, and so they go stay at Alex's family's farmhouse. However, on the night of their arrival, a psychotic serial killer invades the home. Marie must then outsmart a relentless predator and save her friend Alex and also escape. It really begs the question, what lengths would you go to save your best friend? Like I said, this movie is quite controversial, so come back after watching it and let me know what side of the fence you're sitting on. First one is Hellraiser, and this is the original 1987, not the remake that just came out in 2022. Hellraiser is one of the most twisted horror films in existence, if you ask me personally. It spawned too many sequels. So if you've seen all the sequels, let me know down below and I will send you a cookie. But yeah, essentially there's this like little puzzle box that when put together and solved, summons these demons called the Cenobites. You've probably seen the leader of the Cenobites, Pinhead. He's a very iconic horror villain. And in this first film, a man solves the puzzle and the Cenobites are summoned, and it's basically him trying to escape the underworld and escape the grasp of these Cenobites. It's a very interesting flick. It's a masterclass on practical effects and will have you saying what the fuck more times than you can count. And you may recognize some common horror quotes that actually stemmed from this movie. Highly, highly recommend. I love Hellraiser. Grave Encounters follows a reality TV ghost hunter crew, and it's kind of framed at the beginning as this show was canceled after 5 episodes because the crew disappeared, and then they've recovered the footage that was being recorded for the 6th episode. So that's what we get. We're watching this footage that was recovered from the 6th and final episode. We follow them as they explore an abandoned psychiatric hospital where unexplained things have been happening, and it's kind of insinuated at the beginning that a lot of the show is staged or fake, which adds a layer of realism to it because I feel like that's how most people think of those shows in the real world. So we get that aspect thrown in there as well as we begin the film. There are some great jump scares in this film. It's got that eerie atmosphere and it really creeped me out and still does. It's a fun watch, especially for found footage fanatics. I'm going to start off talking about the Australian found footage film The Tunnel by saying that it's going to give you heavy As Above, So Below vibes. As Above, So Below came out years later, and I think that it was heavily inspired by The Tunnel. So if that interests you, you should definitely go watch this movie. It's framed as a documentary, just like As Above, So Below. So there are bits and pieces of interviews spliced throughout the film, and these were recorded after the events that took place in the film. It's about a group of journalists who are investigating this government cover-up, which is related to them abandoning this water recycling project. And their research leads them to an abandoned labyrinth of underground tunnels, and then once they go down into the tunnels to further explore, the horror starts. This was a really great film, lots of scary vibes, and a lot of interesting things about the marketing behind this film. It came out way back in 2011, but there's a documentary right now on Shudder that goes all behind the scenes of how they marketed this movie and how they got it made, and it's very interesting. So if you like the behind the scenes type stuff and you like this film, go check out the documentary as well. Cooties is a 2014 horror comedy where a mysterious food virus suddenly turns all these little munchkins at this elementary school into terrifying flesh-eating zombies. It has a cast of people that we love, including Elijah Wood, Rainn Wilson, Jack McBrayer, Lee Winnell is even in this. Mentioned him a couple times on this channel. All these adults play teachers at the school, and so if you want to watch all these little zombies kind of terrorize these teachers and them trying to survive and escape, this could be a fun little romp for you.
You can't eat the teachers, man!
Housebound is about a rebellious woman, Kylie Bucknell. She's sentenced to house arrest, so she has to go back home and live with her mom for a little bit. But she has to face a little bit more than just her quirky mother. As Kylie endures her confinement, strange and unsettling events begin to unfold, suggesting that the house might be haunted. The humor in this is very cheeky and sarcastic and just lends to a very great, fun horror atmosphere all around. With a perfect blend of humor and horror, Kylie teams up with her mom and a security guard to find out what exactly is happening in their house. It's a ghost story. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You've probably heard the name of this film
so many times and you're like, I have no idea what that movie is, but hopefully that's about to change. The movie is as outrageous as the title suggests. It's about a small town being invaded by aliens that look like these very creepy, scary clowns. It's about a group of friends who must outsmart these aliens before their whole town becomes this twisted funhouse of doom. There are some wacky kills in this one. Feel free to just go watch the kill count over on the Dead Meat channel. You basically watch the whole film over there anyway. This is a B movie, it's a cult classic, and it's got a cult following large enough to warrant a video game that just came out. All right, we're going back to the other end of the spectrum with some disturbing movies. Comedy, disturbing. Two ends of the spectrum. Here we go. These are for the people who feel like they're desensitized to horror films and they just don't think they've seen anything sadistic and sick enough to satiate their horror needs. These are the films that you should go check out. I Spit on Your Grave. I don't usually like recommending this movie to people. It's the original. Trigger warning, SA, and the R word. You'll get a lot of that in this film. Very drawn out, disturbing scenes, and it's basically a revenge story about a woman who is assaulted and exacts revenge on her captors. It's kind of one of those completionist movies where you're just watching it to say that you've watched this list of disturbing movies. It's another controversial film. Some people think that it's a pointless movie and one of the worst horror movies made, while others say that it plays a pretty important part in horror history. My stance is, like I said, I don't really like recommending this to people, and you should really only watch it to check it off of a disturbing movie list if you're really that worried about watching it. Eden Lake is a British horror film that was released in 2008, and it stars everybody's favorite Michael Fassbender. Jenny and her boyfriend Steve want to get a little romantic getaway, and so they decide to visit this remote lake to just get away and be together in holy matrimony. Just kidding, they're not getting married. They're just being boyfriend and girlfriend, which is fine. However, a group of teenagers starts harassing the couple, and it quickly turns into this unrelenting, brutal game of cat and mouse. Will they escape? You'll have to find out yourself, but again, just keep in mind this is in the disturbing category, and so there will be a disturbing scene or two, and this is definitely not like a feel-good horror movie. You can go into this movie knowing that. Ganjam Haunted Asylum is a found footage horror film about a web series crew who decide to explore a haunted psychiatric hospital in South Korea. What starts as a fun exploration quickly spirals into a nightmare. If this premise sounds familiar at all, it's because we already talked about Grave Encounters. This is essentially the Korean version of Grave Encounters, although it came out like 7 years later, so the technology used in the film by the web series crew has been updated a little bit. I will say I personally think that Grave Encounters is the better movie, but if you watch Grave Encounters and you just want more of the same vibes, come watch Ganjam Haunted Asylum. This flick still definitely rivals some of the best found footage horror films out there. Battle Royale got a rare 15+ rating in Japan, and it was banned in several countries. I think the main reason is just because it's young people set to kill each other, which is, you know, it's kind of horrifying in its own right. I don't think there's anything else about this film that would necessarily cause it to be banned. For over a decade, the original production company refused to sell the film rights to any US distributor, but eventually it was sold and it got a direct-to-video release in the US. This is a fun little tidbit for folks who are film buffs outside of horror. Quentin Tarantino himself said that if there's any film in the past 2 decades that he wished he would have made, it's Battle Royale. So that's pretty high praise for a film, especially a foreign horror film. Like, Quentin Tarantino backs it. Obviously it's got to be on your watch list. So in the movie, Japan has put into place this Battle Royale Act that's supposed to control unruly youth. So this class of 9th graders is chosen and transported to this deserted island, and they must basically battle to the death because it's either one survives or 0 survive is essentially the premise of the rules. This is a great film to research after the fact for all of the subtle messages that people think they were going for in making this movie. This is a very important film because it set the blueprint for a lot of films that have been made since that follow this same kind of premise, a la Hunger Games. All right, the big kahuna. I finally get to talk about Cube on this channel.
I'm gonna tell it to you straight. Cube is my favorite horror film, and I'll even admit that it's not the best horror film ever made, but it's my favorite and I can never get enough of it. It might be nearing the top of horror films that I've rewatched the most. It's getting up there. Cube is a movie about a group of strangers who wake up in a giant cube consisting of a bunch of smaller cubes. Some of the cubes are rigged with deadly traps, and so once this group of people find each other, they're tasked with A, finding out why they're there, and B, how to get the hell out of there. The premise alone is very intriguing to me, and the mystery alone is what drives that desire for me to watch it over and over again. Yes, the acting is over the top, it's cheesy at times, it's campy, but that's part of its charm, if you ask me. Also, prepare to be introduced to your new favorite horror villain, Quentin.
So you go around outraged, sticking your nose up other people's assholes, sniffing their business.
Lots of fun trivia about this movie to look up after the fact, so make sure that after you watch the movie you head over to IMDb and look up some of that. There are 3 movies in this franchise and they're all available on Tubi. There is a dip in quality in the other 2 films, but I think it's a great watch for people who are fans of the first one. I personally think it laid the groundwork for movies like Saw, Escape Room, and other horror films that have that type of premise. I would just love in the comments down below if you let me know if you watched Cube, if you love it, if you hate it. Let's talk about Cube. Let's just turn this into a Cube forum.
There it is, more than 100 of the best horror movies you can stream right now in October. If you're a horror fan, you're eating good this month. Let me know what's on your watch list this month and which ones you're adding from today's video. Of course, true horror fans know that spooky season doesn't end with October, so if you enjoy talking about horror all year long, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you got this far in the video, fucking kudos to you, my friend. You can find more delicious horror content right up here. I'll see you in the next one, and remember to embrace the fear all year long.